Chapter 217. The Annihilation Legion charged, bringing with them a thick stench of blood and a strong and cold murderous intent as they launched a death charge towards the Forest Goblin Legion. Faced with such a charge, what could the Forest Goblin Legion, which had no combat ability at all, do? They could only resist with all their might. They threw out long-range magic skills with all their might. In this forest that was filled with the aura of life, their mana was greatly enhanced. Unfortunately, they were facing the most powerful Annihilation Legion of the Eastern Wood Empire. Every warrior of the Annihilation Legion was also of the Eastern Wood Empire, and they were of the purest wood attribute. This forest that was filled with the aura of life would also have a certain enhancement effect on them. Layers of green light instantly surged from the lizard dragons. Even if they were ordinary rank 3 first wood elemental lizard dragons, their green shields were enough to cover the knights on their backs. The cavalrymen of the Annihilation Legion shouted and pointed their spears forward. The mana released from the lizard dragons instantly fused into their bodies. They did not rely on the shields for defense, but instead fused all the mana within the shields with their bodies as they raised their spears high in the air. The 10 Annihilation warrior generals at the forefront raised their spears high above their heads, and rays of green light burst forth from their spears. Their individual strength was far above Garso's, not to mention that they had the support of the Lizard Dragon King. The rays of green light were like a demonic hellish spear filled with the aura of death and slaughter that pierced the sky. Layers of green light instantly surged from the lizard dragons. Even if they were ordinary rank 3 first wood elemental lizard dragons, their green shields were enough to cover the knights on their backs. The cavalrymen of the Annihilation Legion shouted and pointed their spears forward. The mana released from the lizard dragons instantly fused into their bodies. They did not rely on the shields for defense, but fused all the mana within the shields with their bodies as they raised their spears high in the air. The 10 Annihilation warrior generals at the forefront raised their spears high above their heads, and rays of green light burst forth from their spears. Their individual strength was far above Garso's, not to mention that they had the support of the Lizard Dragon King. The rays of green light were like a demonic hellish spear filled with the aura of death and slaughter that pierced the sky. None of the demonic skills launched by the Forest Goblin Legion could get close to the Annihilation Legion. All the demonic skills were destroyed by the glaring rays of green light. At this moment, the thousands of rays of green light in the air completely fused into one and transformed into a huge green spear that pierced through the air. A terrifying scene appeared. All the trees, shrubs, and grass within a 200-meter wide and 1,000-meter long area of the Forest of Life withered in an instant. Their vitality was actually devoured by that huge cyan spear. Under that terrifying mana shock, these withered plants instantly turned into powder, and a huge, empty space appeared in the Forest of Life. Carr blurted out, stacking demonic skills of the same element. This is... Chun Longao snorted in dissatisfaction and said, using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It seems like these kids have been beaten up too little. Green was a very familiar color to the forest goblins, but at this moment, there was only fear in their eyes. The green light that was more than 100 meters long shrouded a huge area. In the next moment, the huge green spear appeared and stabbed forward along with the spears in the hands of the 6 Annihilation warrior generals. Garso only felt that the green light was magnifying in front of him, but he no longer felt afraid. His body felt light, as if it was weightless. The various memories of the past kept appearing in his mind. The green light and the huge mana that was filled with the aura of life made him feel as if he had returned to the embrace of nature. The next moment, endless darkness descended. Wherever the 100-meter-long green spear passed, a huge trench that was 5 meters deep, 50 meters wide, and nearly 3 kilometers long was left on the ground. 80% of the 5,000 forest goblins that Garso brought with him perished in this trench. The rest were either seriously injured by the aftershock or scared out of their wits. To them, this was simply a godly skill. Not only were the forest goblins frightened, but even the magicians and ordinary warriors of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce were all stunned. Some of them were shivering, some were drenched in cold sweat, and some of the more timid ones had even wet their pants. Terrifying, it was simply too terrifying. In that instant, the attack power that erupted from the huge green spear raised the life aura of the Firstwood system to an indescribable limit. It actually achieved the effect of turning life into death. Thousands of living lives were taken away by this spear. There wasn't even any extra smell of blood left in the air, only the deathly aura. The trench that the spear left on the ground was completely gray, a gray that symbolized death. The thousands of warriors of the Annihilation Legion seemed to have long been used to this scene. They didn't even show the slightest hint of fatigue as they quickly formed into teams and gathered behind Chunlongao in the blink of an eye. If the people of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce were still somewhat disdainful and even jealous of the arrogant Annihilation Legion when they first arrived, then at this moment, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Some of the more knowledgeable magicians knew that the attack just now was no ordinary skill. With such lethality, if it wasn't the forest goblin army that was standing in front of them, but the people of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce, would they be able to withstand it? The answer was definitely no. If it were them, the result wouldn't have changed at all, and this was just a spear. Chunlongnao's expression didn't show the slightest bit of smugness, as if all this was normal and should be the way it was. Lucar's eyes were already glazed. His lips were humming, and he couldn't speak for a long time. Chunlongao glanced at him, a hint of faint disdain at the corner of his mouth, and said, "How is it? The power of my Annihilation Legion's Demon Spear of Annihilation is not bad, right?" Lucar came to his senses and said, "Lord Celestial Venerable, just now, that was a super ultimate skill." Chunlongao said proudly, "Of course, it's a superimposed attack that combines the magic power of 110 magicians and 1,000 ground lizard dragon kings, earth lizard dragons, and earth lizard dragons. If it's not a super ultimate skill, what is it? To tell you frankly, such a super ultimate skill can easily kill any 8-crown magician or magician who doesn't have a super ultimate skill. And for us, the Annihilation Legion, this is just one of the Legion's combat skills. What kind of power do you think the royal families have? All 5,000 soldiers of the Annihilation Legion take turns at the Holy and Demonic Passage every year. We are not only the most powerful force in the Empire, but also the sharpest spear in the whole continent. It's their honor to die under the Annihilation Demon Spear." Previously, Lucar had only known of the existence of the Annihilation Legion. Only at this moment did he truly understand how powerful the Annihilation Legion was. Stacking magic skills of the same element sounded simple, but it was much easier to combine magic skills of the same element. In fact, among magicians, this was indeed the case. Combination skills formed by stacking magic skills of the same element was the least powerful, but also the easiest to execute. However, if 1,000 forces were superimposed together, would it be easy? How coordinated would it be? How uniform would the release of magic power need to be? Even the slightest mistake could expose a flaw in this technique. Not only did the Annihilation Army have the best equipment, but each of the Annihilation Cavalrymen, Annihilation Combat Masters, Annihilation Battle Generals, and the Annihilation War God had gone through countless hardships to attain such strength. This was truly a terrifying force. At this moment, Lucar no longer had the slightest doubt that he would be able to wipe out the Forest Demon Tribe. Putting aside that kid who had 1/6 crowns, even if there was a Supreme Being expert here, the 1,000-strong Annihilation Army before him, led by Chunlongao, might still stand a chance. Lucar's idea was indeed somewhat correct. After the establishment of the Annihilation Legion, the imaginary enemy of the 5,000 troops was a Supreme Master, and the target of this 1,000-men, 1,000-beast combination skill was also to fight against Supreme Masters. Of course, they had not had the opportunity to test whether they could contend against Supreme Masters. There was a saying in the world of magicians that it was easy to go from 1 to 8, but difficult to go from 8 to 9. In other words, the gap between 8 and 9 was even greater than the gap between 1 and 8. It had been a long time since a Supreme Master had gone all out in a battle on the continent. Of the forest demons that were still alive, except for a few who were quick enough to turn around and escape, Most of them died in the hands of the Golden Eagle Merchant Union. Lucar had a deep understanding of the forest demons, so he naturally knew that these few thousand forest demons could be said to be the entire combat power of the forest demon tribe. More than 200 forest demon magicians have been wiped out by the Annihilation Legion's 1,000 men, 1,000 dragons combination skill. How could the forest demon tribe resist? The young six-crowned devil master didn't appear either. He must have left this place. It would be best if they didn't have to deal with him. After all, there were two supreme beings behind him. Even Shenlan Gao didn't insist on looking for the young man. The Golden Eagle Merchant Union and the Annihilation Legion began to speed into the Forest of Life. On the way, they encountered fewer and fewer forest demons. Of course, they did not know the reason for this. For the sake of migration, most of the forest demons had gathered in the west to the Forest of Life. The Forest of Life was vast, and it would take some time for them to find the main gathering area of the forest demons. What, Gasso? Gasso and the Great Forest Demon Legion have been wiped out? Elder Odom's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. If not for the forest demon beside him supporting him, he would have fallen. In less than 2 hours, the forest demons sent back the grievous news through a special method. All the combat power of the tribe had been wiped out so quickly. Odom's face was no longer filled with pain, but despair. According to this speed, those people would arrive sooner or later. When that time came, his tribe would really be wiped out. At this moment, this wise elder did not know what to do. They did not have any power to stop the enemy. To Odom, death was not scary. What was scary was the extinction of the forest demon tribe. What should he do? What should he do? Quick, pass down my order. All tribes are to move out. Leave behind everything that you don't need and head west. Odom gave the order with a trembling voice. Even though he knew that this would only prolong the lives of his tribe for a little longer, what else could he do? Unless it was absolutely necessary, he was not willing to give the order for his tribe to scatter and escape. If that was the case, his tribe would not have a good ending after leaving the Forest of Life and entering the human world. They would either die or become part of the human race's efforts. Time ticked by. In the Forest of Life, there seemed to be an extremely condensed aura that was suppressing the hearts of every forest demon. When the news of the Great Forest Demon Legion's annihilation reached them, there was only despair in the forest demon tribe. More than 200,000 forest demons gathered together. Even though they were fleeing, their hearts were cold. It's over. The forest demon tribe is really finished. The Annihilation Legion's marching speed was extremely fast. Even though they were in the forest, the lizard dragons were not affected at all. The Annihilation Legion was directly under the Imperial family. After all, Shenlan Gao could not lead the Legion out for too long. Hence, he had to solve this problem as quickly as possible so that he could return as soon as possible. The ordinary soldiers of the Golden Eagle Merchant Association could no longer keep up with the Annihilation Legion's speed. Lucar simply ordered them to advance steadily and capture the escaping forest demons. This was also his main task. A large number of carriages and cages would soon arrive outside the Forest of Life to transport the captured forest demons back. He still needed to rely on them to produce the source of life in the future. The remaining magicians of the Golden Eagle Merchant Association followed behind the Annihilation Legion and killed their way into the depths of the Forest of Life. Even though there were only about 1,200 of them this time, their combat power was enough to annihilate 10 regular legions, let alone the Forest of Life. As one of the most powerful legions on the continent, the Annihilation Legion definitely had the power to destroy anything. The Annihilation Legion was originally formed to resist the darkness of the Five Elements continent. Together with the strongest legions of the other empires, they became the most powerful existence in the Five Elements continent. Deep rumbling sounds began to appear in the ears of the forest demons. Despair continued to spread. Some of the elderly forest demons simply stopped moving. They turned around and picked up their bows and arrows. Even if it meant sacrificing their lives for their clansmen, they were willing to do so. Odom also stopped in his tracks and said to the elders beside him in a deep voice, "Tom, from now on, I will pass the position of the great elder of the forest demon tribe to you. Let our clansmen and continue to retreat. The faster the better. Once you see the enemy, I will allow you to give the order to scatter and escape. No, great elder, please let me stay. Our clansmen need you. You can't abandon them. Tom grabbed Odom's hand in agitation. Odom stared at him and shouted angrily, "What time is this?" "This is an order. Left and right. Stop him and retreat immediately. Chiefs of all tribes, lead your clansmen and leave immediately. If you need to scatter and escape, you must do it in units. All forest demons above the age of 50, stay where you are and follow me to block the enemy." Chapter 2:18. Great Elder. All the elders of the tribes shouted anxiously. Odom closed his eyes as 2 streaks of green tears flowed down his cheeks. As the chief elder of the tribe, I can only watch the destruction of my tribe and the tragic deaths of my clansmen. I'm ashamed to face my ancestors. If you don't fulfill my wish, then I'll die in front of you right now. You must escape and find our king. Let him lead you to find your home. Only by following our king can we have hope for our tribe. We can only trust our king now. Hurry, let's go. The trembling of the ground became more and more obvious, indicating that the enemy was rapidly approaching. All the elders of the tribes ultimately obeyed Odom's orders. They bowed to Odom one last time and left quickly. All the forest demons above the age of 50 stay behind. They were too slow and would only be a burden to the younger clansmen. Only when a younger clansman and children escaped would there be hope for the forest demon tribe. There were more than 60,000 forest demons above the age of 50. Without Odom's orders, they all stood in rows. The despair in their eyes had disappeared, and all that was left was radiance, a green radiance. They were going to use their bodies to buy time for their young clansmen, even if it was just for a second. It would take time to kill all 60,000 of them. Even if they had to use their own corpses to stop them, they wouldn't take a step back. The last chance for the forest demon tribe was on these 60,000 elderly forest demons. Under Odom's leadership, they were going to release their last flame of life. In the distance, the tall Annihilation army gradually appeared in the forest demon's vision. When Odom saw the Annihilation cavalry, he understood why the great forest demon army was defeated so quickly and miserably. This was definitely not the power of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce. It was the power of the nation, and it was the most powerful force of the nation. How could the forest demon tribe resist an army composed entirely of demonic beast cavalry? Slowly raising the elder's scepter in his hand, Odom shouted at the top of his voice, "My compatriots, for the continuation of our tribe, for the inheritance of the forest demon tribe, we will never retreat until the last drop of our blood is shed. Charge!" The 60,000 forest demons, who had no demon masters and had never fought before, actually burst into unprecedented brilliance at this moment. Every single one of them had tears and determination in their eyes. They were shining with the most brilliant light in their lives as they madly rushed out. They had no weapons in their hands, only their green and fragile bodies. Even so, they spread their arms and rushed towards the Annihilation cavalry, which was filled with destructive aura. Shouts resounded throughout the Forest of Life. At this moment, the entire Forest of Life seemed to be filled with boundless life aura, encouraging the forest demons. Lucar sat on the wood demon dragon's back and said with a frown, "Are these forest monsters crazy? Are they going to commit suicide?" Chunlongao looked at the forest demons that were charging at him like moths to a flame with their arms wide open. He looked at the tribe that was like a green ocean, and there seemed to be something in his eyes. No, they are not crazy. For the continuation of their race, they are making their last effort. This is a race worthy of respect. Lucar's expression changed, and he said, "Lord Celestial Venerate, you can't be." Chunlongao looked at him coldly and said, "No matter how worthy of respect they are, I am a soldier. In the mind of a soldier, there is only one word: obedience. Annihilation is my mission. I can only let them die a little more decisively. Annihilate them, line up." The 1,000 Annihilation cavalry quickly changed their formation. Every one of them raised the spears in their hands and instantly formed a straight line in front of the 60,000 old forest demons, like a great steel wall. The forest demons at the very front had already arrived. Bloody light burst forth in an instant, and an almost visible bloody mist rose up in front of the Annihilation Legion's long snake formation, forming a bloody corridor. The spears in the hands of the Annihilation Legion pierced through at least 2 forest demons, while the claws of the lizard dragons sent at least a few of them flying. However, the old and weak forest demons did not give up. Even if their bodies were pierced by the spears, they still crawled up the spears with all their might, trying to tear through the metal with their teeth. Just as Elder Odom had said, they were using every drop of their blood to buy time for their clansmen. They would not give up until the last drop of their blood was shed. Even though some of the old forest demons were already dead, their corpses still held onto the feet of the lizard dragons tightly, not letting them take a single step forward. As long as they still had a breath left in them, they would use the most primitive method to attack this unshakable steel wall. Odom was really too old. Among the forest demons, he could definitely be considered a long-lived being. However, he was also running towards the steel wall and the spears of death. He panted heavily as if his lungs were on fire, but he still ran. He wanted to die with his clansmen, and, at the same time, he wanted to buy time for them. Everything in front of him had already turned into a sea of blood. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared in the midst of the massacre. Large numbers of forest demon corpses piled up like mountains on the ground. In just a short while, over 10,000 forest demons had already lost their lives in this unstoppable charge. However, it was their charge that did not allow the Annihilation Legion, the #1 legion in the Dongmu Empire, to advance a single step. Odom directly charged towards the most conspicuous and also the tallest Emerald Lizard Dragon King. He could clearly see how cold the person sitting on the back of the Emerald Lizard Dragon King was. It's Odom, the great elder of the forest demon tribe. I'll go and capture him. Once I capture him, I'll definitely be able to obtain many secrets of the forest demons. Carr was a little excited and was about to charge towards Odom, but the 7-meter-long dragon spear was once again placed in front of him. Chen Longao said coldly, "An elder who sees death as a homecoming and launched a suicidal attack for the sake of his clansmen should not be humiliated in any way. Dying under my spear is the best ending for him." A cold glint flashed in his eyes. In an instant, the helmet fell off and covered his face. The Emerald Lizard Dragon King roared towards the sky and suddenly charged forward. The 7-meter-long dragon spear in Chen Longao's hand swept through the air. Thousands of emerald lights exploded like fireworks, instantly taking away the lives of over 100 old forest demons. In the next moment, his dragon spear was already pointed at Odom. The sharp tip of the spear was already at Odom's chest. "Stop!" At this moment, an earth-shattering roar sounded in the sky like thunder. A golden-red meteor descended from the sky with an unparalleled momentum, heading straight for Chen Longao's body. The entire sky seemed to have been dyed golden red at this moment. The blazing aura engulfed everything like a volcanic eruption. Be it the forest demons or the Extermination Legion, they all felt suffocated. Chen Longao was a very conceited person. At this moment, the dragon spear in his hand did not advance even an inch. He clearly felt that if he did not immediately save himself, he would very likely be injured by this attack that was descending from the sky. His eyes flashed with emerald light. Above his head, the wood sun crown of the 8 crowns of armor suddenly appeared. He raised the dragon's spear, and a burst of emerald light suddenly erupted. The dazzling green light that was like fireworks suddenly combined into a single point the moment the golden-red meteor was about to collide with the descending golden-red meteor. Boom! A terrifying wave of air instantly exploded in the sky. Even with Chen Longao's strength, he still swayed a little on the emerald-ground Lizard King's back. One could see how powerful the impact was. The intense golden-red light and the intense elemental suppression caused him to narrow his eyes, and a grave expression appeared on his face. The golden red light revealed itself and shouted again, "All forest demons, retreat." He spread his wings, and when the figure that was bounced into the air revealed his original appearance, the old forest demons who were in the midst of a suicidal attack instantly burst into unparalleled cheers. Odom, whose face was pale, even knelt down on both knees, tears streaming down his face. "King, you're finally back. You're finally back. The continuation of the forest demon tribe depends on you to save us from this crisis." Yes, the person who had suddenly appeared and saved Odom was none other than Ji Dong, who had rushed back from the Earth Spirit Mountain range as quickly as possible. Ji Dong flew rapidly in the sky. When he entered the territory of the Eastern Wood Empire, he felt a vague sense of unease. When he saw the forest of life from afar, he immediately realized that something was wrong. This was because he saw a faint blood-red light in the forest that was originally filled with life. Even the air above the forest was rippling with a faint smell of blood. He immediately knew that something was wrong. The soaring yin-yang flame formation was fully activated, and he rushed over at his fastest speed. When he saw the forest demon corpses on the ground, he could not help but be furious. He rushed down with all his might and saved Odom in time. Even though the blood in his body was surging due to Chun Longao's spear, he could not care less. He immediately shouted with all his might to stop the forest demon's charge, because every second, hundreds and thousands of forest demons were continuously falling. The eyes of the forest demons had long since turned red. Some of the old forest demons who had seen Ji Dong stopped, but there were still many more forest demons who continued their suicidal attack. Stop right now," Odom shouted loudly. The old forest demons, who had already reacted, shouted along with him. Just like that, the suicidal charge gradually came to a stop. However, in this short period of time, over 20,000 old forest demon corpses were left in the forest that was originally filled with life. Chun Longao did not give the order to charge. His eyes were fixed on Ji Dong the whole time. Of course, it was not because he was careless that he did not order his subordinates to charge. The 20,000 old forest demon corpses were like a wall blocking the Annihilation Army's path. Moreover, to him, these old forest demons who did not have the strength of battle bulls were not a problem at all. If he wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. The 60,000 old forest demons were far from enough for his Annihilation Army to kill until they were tired. Ji Dong was the only one who truly made him feel fear. It seemed like he had blasted Ji Dong into the air, but Chun Longao's sharp senses told him that the young man who had suddenly appeared was not injured at all. He had only been knocked back by him. Moreover, the extremely young and strong fire attribute mana rushed into his body from that attack. Although it was forced out by his massive 8 crown armors with attribute mana, the feeling of the attribute suppression was not pleasant either. That attack could only be said to be a draw between the two of them. What worried Chun Longao the most was the pair of wings on Ji Dong's back, which was Ji Dong's Phoenix Dance Dragon Snake transformation. If he was still confident that he could keep Ji Dong here before, with this pair of wings, Ji Dong's chances of escaping would obviously be much higher. Ji Dong's eyes had gradually turned blood red. The corpses of the forest demons and the forest that had been completely dyed red filled his heart with rage. Because of his rage, his body was trembling uncontrollably. Waves of violent aura kept surging from his body. Ever since he had arrived in this world, he had never felt so furious. Even in his previous life, he had only heard of the word genocide. However, at this very moment, it was clearly presented before his eyes. If he had arrived a little later, it was likely that not a single one of the tens of thousands of forest monsters would have survived, and even more forest monsters would have been slaughtered by these humans. Humans were the most intelligent of all living beings. Did they have the right to deprive other races of their right to live? No, absolutely not. His blood-red gaze landed on Lucas. As if squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth, a chilling voice rang out. "All of you will definitely pay for your actions today. Today, I, Ji Dong, swear that if I don't completely destroy the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce and erase it from this world, I'm not human." He did not recognize Chen Longwei, but he recognized Lu Kar. He did not know that the Annihilation Legion in front of him was not a part of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce. So all his anger was naturally focused on the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce. Even the Annihilation Knights, who were accustomed to killing and death, could not help but shudder when they heard Ji Dong's voice. Chun Long Gao raised the dragon spear in his hand and shouted in a deep voice, "Annihilation Legion, get into formation and fight in a circle." 1,000 Annihilation Knights quickly spread out and raised the spears in their hands. They quickly expanded their range. They did not care about the forest demons at all. Instead, they quickly formed a huge circle and surrounded Ji Dong. Everyone raised the spears in their hands and pointed them at Ji Dong in the air. Lu Kar led his men and quietly retreated to the outer circle, waiting for the opportunity to kill Ji Dong. In the entire core open space, only Ji Dong and Chun Long Gao were left. Fire and wood, tyrant and annihilation faced each other. At this moment, they only had eyes for each other. Chapter 219. The dragon spear in Chun Long Gao's hand pointed straight at Ji Dong. Looking at the blood flickering in Ji Dong's eyes, feeling his rising crazy fighting intent and violent aura, he knew that this battle was inevitable. Only by destroying the young man in front of him here and slaughtering all the forest monsters could he avoid all troubles. A fierce killing intent constantly burst out from Chun Long Gao's body, rushing straight into the sky, enveloping Hyoheim's moving body. The Emerald Lizard Dragon King also rose a dazzling green light, its thick and powerful legs spread apart, squatting in a half-squatting position, as stable as Mount Tai. The first wood magic emitted from its body completely integrated with the aura emitted by Chun Long Gao. Although Ji Dong was in the sky and Chun Long Gao was on the ground, Ji Dong felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. Among all the opponents Ji Dong had faced before, none of them had been able to completely fuse with their magical beasts like Chun Long Gao had done, as if they were one. Not to mention the pressure from Chun Long Gao's level. 84 mana caused the ground to be filled with a green luster. Ji Dong was like a bird flying in the air, and below him was a boundless ocean. The Forest of Life was originally a wood attribute world. Under the buff of the attribute, Chun Long Gao's momentum reached its peak in a very short time. In the air, Ji Dong was not idle. He spread his wings and first put on the twin radiance of sun and moon gloves. Then, with a shake of his wrist, a golden red light exploded in the air, and the demon Lord Yin-Yang armor instantly scattered and covered his body. Although it was not a full body armor, at a glance, it could be seen that its quality was better than the cyan full body armor on Chun Long Gao's body. Especially the ferocious spikes. Ji Dong's violent aura was full of fear. The strange black and white Yin-Yang crown appeared unreservedly above Ji Dong's head. Although his eyes were red, his heart was extremely cold. This was the benefit of the soul fire. No matter what, his soul could remain calm in the depths of the city. In the face of a strong enemy, if he was blindly impulsive, the result would only be defeat. Without a doubt, Chun Long Gao was the most powerful opponent Ji Dong had ever met. Even when he sparred with Chun Long Gao before, Chun Long Gao was not as strong as the current Chun Long Gao. He felt that Chun Long Gao's strength should be at the same level as the 6 glorious dragons. Of course, for years later, how much Fury strength had improved was not something Ji Dong could judge. With the extreme Yang Thunder, his cultivation was definitely above the person in front of him. However, even though he was a powerhouse with 8 crowns, Ji Dong was not afraid at all. Instead, it stimulated his fighting spirit. Looking at the ground full of corpses, looking at the tragedy of blood flowing like a river, Ji Dong was angry and sad. He had completely connected himself with the forest demon race. No matter how powerful the enemy was, he would not retreat. Not to mention justice or kindness, but for the sake of this kind race, he could not die here. The momentum of both sides was rising. The air was filled with a strong fire element, and the ground was filled with a vast amount of first wood element. Neither of them was in a hurry to make a move. They were both staring at each other. As long as one of them showed the slightest bit of carelessness, what awaited them would be a storm-like attack from the other side. Chun Longao's calmness caused Lu Kar, who was watching from afar, to gasp in amazement. Ji Dong's attribute suppression was not easy to bear. With his strength of 6 crowns, as long as the opponent was not a powerhouse with 9 crowns, they would be affected by the ultimate dual fire. Lu Kar knew that if it was him in this confrontation, Ji Dong would definitely find a flaw. Last time, if he did not have the scroll to save his life, he would have already died. A roar and an angry roar sounded almost at the same time. Ji Dong descended from the sky like a meteor. On the sinister mask of the Jun Mo Yin Yang armor, a bloody light burst out from his eyes, directly piercing Chun Longao's eyes. With an impassioned roar, his magic power fully bloomed. The 7-meter dragon spear in Chun Longao's hands exploded in the air. A green ball of light instantly turned into stars, piercing at least 10 directions at Hyoheim. Every spear was filled with an extremely sharp momentum and a strong killing intent. The Emerald Lizard Dragon King below him stood firmly, not moving an inch. However, every spear that Chun Longao stabbed out contained its magic power. At this moment, Ji Dong felt like he was facing the combination of a man and a dragon. This was no longer as simple as an 18 crowns demon master. Facing the sky, full of spears, Ji Dong could only rely on his own 2 fists. The spikes on the Jun Mo Yin Yang armor popped out. His body flickered in midair, and under the effect of the flying serpent flash, he rushed out of the encirclement of the rain of spears in an instant. His body dived downwards, directly rushing towards Chun Longao on the back of the Emerald Lizard Dragon King. Close combat was Ji Dong's strongest suit. By shortening the distance, not only could he display his strengths, but he could also prevent the 7-meter dragon spear in Chun Longao's hands from displaying its full power. The appearance of the flying serpent flash caused Chun Longao's expression, hidden behind the mask of the armor, to freeze. This skill was not something he had expected. In a situation where he had completely locked onto his opponent had suddenly rushed out and locked onto him. Not only had his attack missed, but he had also fallen behind. Facing Ji Dong's dive, Chun Longao's reaction was extremely fast. He waved the dragon spear in his hand, and this time it was no longer specks of light. Instead, it was a green light screen that suddenly burst out. It produced a large area of green light in the air, forcefully sealing off all possible directions that Ji Dong could approach. With Chun Longao's rich combat experience, how could he not see through Ji Dong's intentions? At the same time, a layer of thick and viscous green light suddenly burst out from Chun Longao's body. At this moment, Ji Dong felt as if all the plants in the forest of life had become one with Chun Longao's body. The surroundings had completely turned into a world composed of the first wood element. An indescribably huge pressure was released from Chun Longao's whole body. Within a diameter of 100 meters, the green light rose, and there was no other color. Floating in the air, although Ji Dong could use his ultimate dual fire to force this almost sticky green light out of his body, his movements suddenly became a bit sluggish. What made him frown even more was that this green light clearly contained considerable mental strength. In that instant, Ji Dong remembered what his teacher's wife, Yin Xiaorong, had told him about the abilities of an 8-crown magic master. When a magic master's cultivation reached 5 crowns, they could have an elemental body. When it was 6 crowns, they could have the power of contracts. When it was 7 crowns, magic and the elements in nature could be perfectly combined, and there was no longer a need to deliberately cultivate. The source of magic would also automatically absorb the magic of its own attribute in the air to replenish itself. This was called the source of magic. Generally speaking, as long as a magic master's cultivation reached 7 crowns, after a long period of evolution, as long as they did not die, they would definitely break through to 8 crowns. And what was the special characteristic of an 8-crown magic master? The answer was very simple, and that was the ability that Chun Longao was displaying in front of him. Magic Domain, exclusive to thousands of 8-crown magic masters. The Magic Domain was a kind of domain that was displayed by a magic master. It relied on the resonance of their own magic with the magic of the same attribute in the air. The magic domain was not only formed by magic, but also contained the powerful mental strength of the eight-crown magic master. Within the scope of their own magic domain, the magic master's strength in all aspects could be increased by at least 30%, and they could also accurately grasp the opponent's every movement and make the most acute reactions. Every time a magic master advanced by one crown, their strength would take a qualitative leap. If it was not for Jidong's ultimate dual fire, how could he challenge those of a higher level? At this time, what he encountered was Chun Longao's first wood magic domain. Compared with the ability displayed by the Dark Second Wood Saint Scorpion, this first wood magic domain would be more difficult to deal with, because it itself was a characteristic of an eight-crown magic master, and it did not consume much of Chun Longao's power. At that time, Scorpion and the Sissy Tenth Water Saint disciple joined hands, but they were only simulating the magic domain to restrict Jidong. Chun Longao released his own magic domain, which showed how much importance he attached to Jidong. Others could not see anything about Jidong's flying snake flash, but he understood that this was a powerful skill that could determine the outcome of the battle. If he could not restrain it, even if his magic was far above Jidong's, this battle would become very difficult. Therefore, before the flying snake flash could really play a role, he had already made the most correct response. His hands pressed down, and an extreme masculine chi instantly erupted from Jidong's body. It collided with the magic on Chun Longao's dragon spear, causing a deafening explosion. Jidong's body took advantage of the momentum to bounce up. Behind him, black and white light condensed and turned into yin-yang fish. The yin-yang double fire conglomeration array appeared at the same time. The opponent had already used the magic domain, so what else could he hold back? With the appearance of the yin-yang double fire conglomeration array, Jidong's entire aura suddenly changed. The extremely strong flame instantly rose, and the golden color erupted. A 3-meter-tall sovereign body appeared in midair. It was the flame sovereign body. Seeing the yin-yang fish pattern on Jidong's back, Chun Longao was shocked again. It could greatly increase magic power in an instant, and there was a faint, strange pattern in the yin-yang fish. Could this be the legendary 5 Elements array? No wonder the hundreds of Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce's demon masters were defeated in front of him. If this kid with extreme fire magic power was allowed to attack, the destructive power could be imagined. The Flame Sovereign King waved its right hand in the air. Suddenly, a strong golden flame went straight for Chun Longao. It was the Bright Yang Flame. The Bright Yang Flame released under the Flame Sovereign King state forcibly broke a passage in the first wood magic domain. The distorted light, with a strong burst of terrifying magic power, arrived in an instant. Chun Longao snorted coldly, patted the hidden jade-ground Lizard Dragon King with his left hand, raised the dragon spear, and suddenly, countless sparks flew in the air. At the same time, the jade-ground Lizard Dragon King flapped its wings and soared into the air, carrying Chun Longao straight to Jidong. The flying speed of the jade-ground Lizard Dragon King was actually not fast, but its sudden movement gathered the powerful strength of the muscles in its legs. It could be said that it jumped up and hit the Flame Sovereign King. The dragon spear in Chun Longao's hand was pointed to the sky, and the strong light almost made him the jade-ground Lizard Dragon King, and the dragon spear in his hand instantly turned into a transparent color. The Azure Dragon Phantom solidified behind him, and the strange thing was that the Azure Dragon Totem directly integrated into Chun Longao's body. Jidong felt that he was not facing a demon master, but the real first wood divine beast Azure Dragon. All the light instantly condensed into a point in the air. The powerful aura and the binding of the demon domain caused the wings behind Jidong to temporarily lose the ability to fly. Condensing into a point, the azure light with a distant dragon's roar reverberated in the air, like azure lightning crossing the sky. That azure light instantly cut through the air, heading straight for Jidong's chest. It was also a first would sure kill skill, but when used by Chun Longwei, It was a completely different concept from when used by Carr. Even if Ji Dong had the ultimate magic power, he was completely overwhelmed by the terrifying magic power and fierce aura that Chun Longgao had erupted at this moment. There was no other way. All he could do now was to block. Hua! With an angry roar, the flame monarch body erupted with endless golden light. Ji Dong stepped in the air. His right fist condensed all the magic power with the proud will of the monarch and slashed wildly in the air. A crisp phoenix cry sounded, and Hua flew out of the vermilion bird bracelet. The magic power on her body instantly turned into the ultimate yang fire, and by virtue of the connection between their souls, she merged with Ji Dong. It was the monarch's sure kill skill, phoenix dancing brilliant sun all. What would be the scene of the Annihilation War, Gods, Azure Dragon Extinction, Thorn, meeting the Flame, Monarch's Phoenix Dancing, Brilliant Sun All? It was also a single-target penetrating attack, and it was also the eruption of all the magic power. Ji Dong's invincible Flame Monarch's 3 sure kill skills encountered trouble this time. The oppression of the first with magic territory greatly weakened Ji Dong's ability to absorb the magic elements from the air. At the same time, it also made it impossible for him to avoid it. The opponent was accumulating power, and he was fighting in a hurry, and the aura that erupted from Chun Longgao was not inferior to Ajin. It was not known how many actual battles he had experienced. Ji Dong was now just a beginner. The magic gap between the two sides was undoubtedly huge. This was not like the gap between Ji Dong and Ji Yifeng when he was a 3-crown champion. The difference between 3-crown and 5-crown was 20 levels, and the difference between 6-crown and 8-crown was also 20 levels. The magic power of the same level was completely different. The higher the level, the greater the magic power required for each promotion. Chun Longgao, who was an 8-crown champion, had almost 3 times the overall magic power of Ji Dong. Even if he was affected by the ultimate dual fire attributes, Ji Dong also had the Demon Monarch Yin-Yang armor, the Sun and Moon dual fire gloves, and the 5 elements array. There was still a gap between the magic power of the two sides. In a head-on confrontation, the one who suffered was always the one with the weaker magic power. There was no doubt about this. Gold and cyan condensed into a point in the air. In the next moment, it erupted in an instant, and the cry of the word annihilation seemed to be heard in the air. Below, the Knights of the Annihilation Legion shouted in unison, making Chun Longgao's momentum even more. Chapter 220. Even the Knights of the Annihilation Legion had not seen their commander in action for a long time. Everyone was dazzled by the battle in mid-air. The golden light shattered and turned into countless specks of light that scattered in the air. The green light dissipated and revealed its true form. Its sharpness was that 7-meter dragon spear. However, the dragon spear's length had been forcibly shortened by a meter. Its tip had actually melted. Chun Longgao sat steadily on the emerald ground Lizard King's back. The armor on his body and the emerald ground Lizard King's body were both enveloped in a layer of golden light. However, in the next moment, the demonic domain that was originally released suddenly retracted. With a loud bang, the golden light shattered like the previous brilliant sun and was forcefully forced out of his body. Compared to Chun Longgao, Ji Dong was in a much more difficult situation. His body had been thrown high into the air, and he could barely stabilize himself after flipping a few times. If not for the fact that Chun Longgao was restricted by his ultimate flames and could not pursue him, he would have been in grave danger. The first wood attribute was naturally not enough to harm him. It could not penetrate the ultimate dual flames at all. However, Chun Longgao's terrifying demonic power that had condensed into a single point had forcefully pierced through the brilliant sun cone. Ji Dong's right hand was currently trembling uncontrollably. If not for his Phoenix Dance Dragon Snake transformation, his right arm would have been completely crippled and he would have been severely injured. With his demonic power completely suppressed by his opponent, the price that Ji Dong had to pay was that his right hand could not be used temporarily. The chi and blood in his body churned, but he was not injured. How could the flying serpent transformation be ordinary? However, Ji Dong was now truly enraged. Chun Longao's strength had instead caused a monstrous battle intent to rise in his heart. The shattered flame sovereign body reformed once again, and little flame also floated above his head. Jidong spread his wings and looked coldly at Chun Longao below him. He then looked at the Annihilation Legion's soldiers scattered around him. A cold light appeared in the depths of his eyes. He wanted to kill. He wanted to kill all these enemies to avenge the Forest Demon tribe. At this point, he had already decided not to hold anything back. Without the flaming bar by his side, he did not need to hold back at all and could do whatever he wanted. The roars of dragons and snakes instantly rang out in the air. In an instant, the entire sky became a mixture of red and blue. Everyone's expression changed. That dignified aura actually crushed the demon domain around Chun Longao's body in an instant. In the air, giant golden-red dragons and black serpents that flickered with ice-cold blue flames continuously bloomed. 6 dragons and 6 serpents were released by Jidong from his black and white yin-yang crown without holding back. In a head-on battle, he knew that he was no longer Nu Long Ao's opponent. It was not that he could not fight against an 8-crown demon master, but because among the 8-crown demon masters, Chun Longao's strength was definitely at the peak. With his powerful battle ability tempered through slaughter, coupled with the overall suppression of mana, the support of a Class 8 magical beast, the magical weapons and equipment on his body, and the demon domain that restricted the flying serpent flash, it was impossible for the level 61 Jidong to completely contend against him. Moreover, there were so many Annihilation Legion soldiers with a dignified aura and hundreds of demon masters from the Golden Eagle Merchant Association. If he wanted to win this battle, it was almost impossible to do so without using his ultimate skill. 6 dragons and 6 snakes. This could be said to be the condensation of more than 3 times his own magic power. The ultimate dual fire finally fully displayed his powerful majesty. Jidong's body was no longer just a simple flame flickering. Gold and black, 2 colored flames, rose from his hands at the same time. At this moment, his eyes hidden under the mask of the demon Lord Yin-Yang armor had completely turned white. The soul fire danced in his body, and a huge spiritual power was unreservedly released, fusing with every dragon and snake in the air. This was Jidong's strongest power. 6 dragons and 6 snakes, completely under the control of the spiritual power amplified by the soul fire. The huge pressure made even an expert of Chun Longao's level feel a sense of suffocation. Fear, which had not appeared for a long time, began to spread in Chun Longao's heart. He subconsciously thought, is this young man really just a 6-crown demon master? The pressure in the air had clearly reached the level of a super sure kill skill. Even if it was him, if he wanted to use a super sure kill skill, he would have to pay a great price, and the opponent in front of him was only a 6-crown demon. Moreover, he was not injured in that blow just now, and it was unknown how he had released such a huge amount of magic power. 6 dragons and 6 snakes descended from the sky with a long roar. They dispersed in the air and pounced on Chun Longao from 12 directions at the same time. None of the dragons or snakes could pose a threat to Chun Longao, but when they pounced at the same time, their magic power was already above the 8-crown level 84 first with Celestial Master. Moreover, they had the ultimate magic power. At this moment, Chun Longao's firstwood attribute was really and truly suppressed. What he was facing was also the greatest capital that Jidong could use to contend with an 8-crown demon master. The 5 elements array was worthy of being the powerful ability that created sage-level powerhouses in ancient times. Relying on the yin and yang double fire array, relying on the soul fire, the combat power that Jidong erupted at this moment was enough to make even a 9-crown supreme powerhouse look askance. Chun Longao roared and said, "Thousands of dragons, annihilation, demon spear, kill." His roar was so fierce, and at the same time, an extremely terrifying aura also broke out from his body. The cyan armor on his body emerged with layers of strong cyan halos, and the slightly damaged dragon spear in his hand burst out with unprecedented powerful magic power. The 8-crown sun crown exploded in an instant, turning into the purest first wood magic power, all of which was injected into Chun Longao's body. He waved the dragon spear in his hand, and 8 azure dragons appeared around his body in an instant. This was his full power, the truly powerful skill of the 8-crown heavenly master. Terrifying magic power condensed in midair, surrounding his body in 8 directions. Chun Longao opened his mouth, and a cyan light spewed out from his mouth. It was a cyan leaf. The jade-like luster caused the 8 surrounding azure dragons to pale in comparison. Only magisters with 6 crowns and above could understand what he was doing. The jade-like leaves he spat out were clearly the source of his magic power. The magic power of a devil master was like the core pearl of a high-level magical beast. It was the power of desperation. In the face of the great pressure brought by the 6 dragons and 6 snakes, and the full burst of the ultimate dual fire, Chun Longao had to use all his strength to resist, because he had no idea what kind of surprise Ji Dong would bring him in the next moment. The Annihilation Legion, 1,000 cavalrymen, roared at the same time, the dragon spear in their hands, along with the cyan light of the lizard dragon beneath them, flashed at the same time. 1,000 rays of brilliance shot out from the ring-shaped formation and condensed above Chun Longao's head, turning into the purest first wood magic power. The same attribute of 1,000 layers of superposition combination skill. Ji Dong's pupils contracted violently, just like Lu Kar, who was stunned. He never thought that the enemy he was facing would be so powerful that the 1,000 cavalrymen could integrate all of his magic power into one. The jade-green Nirvana Demon spear appeared in midair. The 100-meter-long spear pierced through the air, ignoring the 6 dragons and 6 snakes. Instead, it headed straight for Ji Dong, who was in midair. The combination skill completed by these 1,000 people still had a flaw. It was impossible to control it perfectly like a magic skill performed by a devil master. They could only find a direction as a target to attack. There was no doubt that Chun Longao's order to them was to kill Ji Dong, and he had to rely on his own strength to resist the 6 dragons and 6 snakes. What to do? The problem Ji Dong was facing now was a choice. He was completely confident that the magic generated by the 6 dragons and 6 snakes would have a 60% chance of killing Chun Longao and an 80% chance of severely injuring him. However, if that was the case, there was only one result for him, and that was death. No matter how powerful the flying serpent power transformation technique was, it was impossible for him to rely on his own body to resist a super ultimate skill. Moreover, it was a super ultimate skill that was almost a single target attack. That was a super ultimate skill that condensed thousands of dragons. Under the concentrated attack of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes, Chun Longao still had the possibility of surviving. However, without the devil power of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes, Ji Dong and Hua would not be able to withstand the Nirvana Demon Spear. At this moment, Chun Longao's attack had already erupted. The origin of mana became the core and floated in front of his chest. The 8 green dragons that were released circled around his body. Although it was 8 and not the singular number of 9, it was released with the origin of mana as the core. The strength that he displayed at this moment was enough to be proud of. This was already the strongest attack that he could unleash with the help of the Emerald Ground Lizard King's power. How could he not see the embarrassment that Ji Dong was facing? If Ji Dong chose to withdraw the 6 dragons and 6 snakes for defense, then the magic power he released in front of him could immediately be turned into an attack. No matter how magical Ji Dong's power was, it would be impossible for him to block the Nirvana Demon Spear and his 8 dragons' extreme annihilation, which were almost at the level of a sure kill skill. If Ji Dong chose to continue attacking, then he was confident that he could block the 6 dragons and 6 snakes without dying. With his rich combat experience, Chun Longao made the right choice. However, he still underestimated Ji Dong's strength. He underestimated the instantaneous, explosive power of the ultimate dual-fire Devil Master, who had played a decisive role on the holy evil battlefield. Jidong made a choice that Chun Longao could not understand at all. The 6 dragons and 6 snakes that were pouncing towards Chun Longao suddenly stopped in the air. They did not attack Chun Longao, nor did they fly up to save themselves. Instead, the dragons and snakes collided, right in the middle of the demon spear of destruction and Chun Longao's 8 dragons' ultimate skill. Every ultimate fire dragon collided with an ultimate fire serpent. The fire of extreme yin and yang immediately produced the effect of an ultimate yin and yang combination skill. In an instant, a large amount of fire elements of yin and yang burst forth in the entire sky. Chun Longao and his Emerald Ground Lizard Dragon King were heavily smashed to the ground by an unparalleled huge pressure. Although his 8 dragons' ultimate skill was already in existence that was close to a super skill, it was still a fine line away from being a super skill. Under the absolute suppression of the opponent's huge magic power, it could only protect his body. Once he released the protective magic power to attack, then the terrifying explosive power produced by the 6 dragons and 6 snakes could directly take his life. The sound of shattering glass constantly rang out around the 8 dragons' annihilation. Those were the 6 dragons and 6 snakes formed from the condensation of the ultimate dual flames. Their pure mana was already above Chun Longao's, not to mention the intense attribute suppression. The pressure was so oppressive that Chun Longao felt like he couldn't breathe. He couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock. He knew that he had underestimated Jidong. If the 6 dragons and 6 snakes all attacked him instead of colliding with each other, could he really withstand such a powerful attribute explosion? What he had underestimated was the power that could be unleashed when the ultimate dual fire combination skill was completed. Back then, the 4 dragons and 4 snakes had scared Fury into going all out against them, let alone the 6 dragons and 6 snakes in front of him. Jidong could already control them perfectly. If it was just Chun Longao alone, Jidong was completely capable of using the huge magic power in the preservation array to destroy him. The collision and explosion of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes not only completely suppressed Chun Longao, but also cut off all the follow-up of the Demon Spear of Nirvana launched by the 1,000-Dragon Annihilation Legion. Their magic power could no longer continue to follow up. Only the Demon Spear of Nirvana that had already formed went straight for Jidong in the air. In midair, Jidong was as calm as eternal ice. The golden color on his body instantly turned black. It was the Dark Flame Devil King. In the face of the Demon Spear of Nirvana that was almost a single-target ultimate skill, Jidong did not panic at all. His Dark Flame Devil King body was instantly restrained, and a strange scene appeared. A liquid black crescent moon quietly appeared behind him. Even if the magic that erupted from the 6 dragons and 6 snakes in the air was so terrifying, and the Demon Spear of Nirvana was so powerful, it could not cover the attraction of this black moon. The surroundings were still bright, but the strange thing was that the sun in the sky had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a crescent moon that was exactly the same as the black moon behind Jidong. Jidong's left hand was raised horizontally by his side, and his palm was opened in the shape of a claw. It was elegant and cold, and under the contrast of the nirvanic darkness, it turned from ruthlessness to coldness. The black moon in midair instantly shone a dark light on his left hand. At the same time, the black moon behind him and all the darkness brought by the Dark Flame Devil King merged. The moon will make you think of me. Forbidden 100,000 serene flame ice. All the darkness condensed into a dancing black flame on Jidong's left hand. That black flame could actually reflect a strange luster. It was clearly a flame, but it gave people a strange feeling as cold as ice. In the next moment, this gloomy and strange black flame had already broken through the air with almost hysterical arrogance. Chapter 2:21. The Dark Flame Ice, a ball of icy black flames that seemed to have a life of its own, descended from the sky. Even though the Demon Spear of Destruction possessed a terrifying attack power that was close to that of a sure kill technique, who could control the direction of its attack when thousands of dragons overlapped. Without any suspense, the deep, ice-cold black flames lightly and gently touched the demonic spear that seemed to be filled with a destructive aura. The black flames instantly spread and enveloped the demon spear of destruction in an instant, turning it into a pitch-black spear. However, the sure-kill technique's attack power was too strong. Even though it was covered by the dark flame ice, the momentum of the demon spear of destruction didn't decrease at all. Furthermore, it contained a huge amount of mana that seemed to be able to completely shatter the dark flame ice in the next moment. However, as the black flames descended, its main body, the dark flame Devil King, had already turned into a flame monarch in midair. The speed at which the extreme yang fire changed to the extreme yin fire was unparalleled. The sun hung high in the sky, and a huge golden sun appeared behind the flame monarch. Even though there was no astronomical phenomenon to complement it, the bright flames were still filled with a powerful aura that seemed to be able to destroy everything. Forbidden, 100,000, brilliant sun all. The mighty flame monarch descended from the sky with an indomitable momentum. The brilliant sun all that had previously appeared and lost to Chun Longao's green dragon's extermination thorn appeared once again. But this time, there was no Eclipse Phoenix Hua-Er's assistance. That's right. What Jidong had to do now was to use the power of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes to display his strongest attack power. Under such circumstances, he had to preserve Hua-Er's strength because he couldn't be sure what kind of situation he would face after this attack. For years ago, Jidong had used this skill for the first time on the Holy Evil Island and released a prototype of a sure-kill technique, the yin-yang boundary of sun and moon that was infinitely close to a sure-kill technique. For years later, he had formed a soul fire, and the 4 dragons and 4 snakes had become 6 dragons and 6 snakes. His mana had also reached level 61. When the black and gold colors collided, all the air froze. Even the Annihilation Demonic Spear, which was almost a sure-kill technique, also stopped in midair at the point where the gold and black colors exploded. No matter how united the Annihilation Army was, when they released their combination technique, their magic power would naturally be lost in the air. Therefore, what they used was not a true ultimate killing technique, just like the Sun, Moon, Yin, and Yang world that Jidong had used 4 years ago. At this moment, when the ice of flames and the brilliant sun all collided, the word similar played a decisive role. In the past, in the Sun and Moon Yin-Yang world, there was only a strange phenomenon in the sky. It was half gold and half black, and the sun and moon reflected each other. But at this moment, from the sky to the ground, the entire space had become half gold and half black. Between heaven and earth, all the other attributes of magical elements were suffering from incomparably strong repulsion. Fine explosive sounds continuously came from the Nirvana demonic spear. The demonic spear that was frozen in the air trembled in the middle of the gold and black colors. Jidong's figure disappeared, and the 2 phantoms carried endless pride and majesty. The ruthless and overbearing flame monarch, the cold and profound dark flame Devil King. Just like that, they held each other's right hands in the air. All the fire elements that the 6 dragons and 6 snakes burst out were instantly swept away by the 2 huge phantoms and condensed into this indescribable mana. The ultimate Yin fire and the ultimate Yang fire fused with each other, and the golden ultimate Yang fire instantly turned white, turning the forest of life into a world of black and white. A diameter of 3,000 meters. That was a range that covered everyone below, and even Jidong himself was extremely shocked by this range. Compared to back then, the range of the Sun and Moon Yin-Yang world had increased by 3 times. Fortunately, those old forest goblins had already retreated under Odom's lead. Odom was wise and profound, and he knew that he and his clansmen would only cause trouble for Jidong and take away his energy. When the Annihilation Cavalry started to surround them, he quickly retreated with his clansmen. He could only choose to believe in Jidong's strength, and there was nothing else he could do. In the eyes of all the Annihilation Cavalry and the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce's mages, Everything between heaven and earth seemed to have turned black and white. And under the illumination of the sun and moon, this black and white transformed into a three-dimensional yin and yang fish from heaven to earth, enveloping everything within. Boom! The demon destruction spear finally couldn't withstand the huge pressure of the ultimate skill condensed from the ultimate dual flames, and a terrifying explosion burst out in the air. That powerful skill that had once destroyed the great Forest Goblin Legion was destroyed in the air, just like that. However, its explosion wasn't in vain, as it still brought the Annihilation Cavalry a glimmer of hope. The originally condensed space loosened the moment the demon destruction spear exploded. Taking advantage of this brief moment, Chun Longao roared at the sky and abruptly unleashed his 8 dragons' extreme annihilation with all his might, instantly exploding in the air. Even the jadeite leaves formed from his origin power were unleashed without any reservation. Suddenly, a layer of green chi forcibly opened up a temporary area in the loosened sun and moon yin-yang world, allowing the Annihilation Cavalry to temporarily regain the ability to move. Almost at the top of his lungs, Chun Longao shouted, "Annihilation belongs to the Annihilation Cavalry." 1,000 spears were raised once again, and 1,000 rays of green light didn't launch an attack this time. Instead, they were all injected into the 8 dragons' extreme Annihilation Cavalry that Chun Longao had raised. The 8 azure dragons attached to the light shield seemed to come alive. The green light grew, and a 9th azure dragon was born. The 9 azure dragons became one, and they soared into the air, heading straight for the sun and moon yin-yang world that had just been formed and shaken by the demon destruction spear. After the 9 azure dragons were formed, it was no longer the 8 dragons' extreme Annihilation Cavalry, but the exclusive ultimate skill of the Annihilation Cavalry that Chun Longao could only fully release with the power of his subordinates, Azure Dragon God's Descent. The 9 azure dragons merged into one in mid-air, turning into a huge azure dragon that was 100 meters long. It broke through the air, and the black and white colors on the ground were completely resisted. Since this azure dragon was called God's Descent, it could naturally display the true strength of the first wood divine beast, Clear Dragon. The black and white Strangulation Cavalry, the azure dragons soared into the sky. At this time, the battlefield was playing out the collision between ultimate skills and ultimate skills. As soon as Lucar regained his ability to move, he didn't hesitate to get off the bramble with Demonic Dragon. He quickly drilled into the abdomen of the bramble with Demonic Dragon and released all his magic power. His body crawled on the ground. He didn't want to die. Ultimate skills, it turned out to be ultimate skills. He could only rejoice in his heart, rejoicing that he had retreated fast enough last time. If someone could look down from 1,000 meters above, they would see that within the forest of life, within a diameter of 3,000 meters, a huge black and white yin-yang fish was spinning rapidly. And at the next moment, a ray of green light forcibly rushed out of the black and white yin-yang fish. The yin-yang fish then collapsed, but the green light that broke through the heavy encirclement was also completely destroyed when it broke through the extreme color. This was the collision of ultimate skills. The final result of the collision between the 2 ultimate skills was actually a tie. Jidong was in midair. He was finally injured. No matter how strong his body was, he couldn't withstand the huge magic power impact produced by the ultimate skills backlash. Blood spurted out wildly, and his whole body fell from the sky. Feng Wu's dragon snake transformation had been automatically cancelled. However, Jidong was injured, and the Annihilation Legion also paid a huge price. All the Annihilation heavy cavalry were destroyed in the instant when the Sun-Moon yin-yang boundary and the Azure Dragon God's Descent collided, including their mounts. Not even dregs were left. Although the Annihilation Battle Masters, Annihilation Battle Generals, and the magicians of the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce survived, more than 50% of them were injured, and some with weaker magic power directly became idiots. As the commander of the Annihilation Legion, Chun Longao was also in an extremely miserable state at this moment. His armor was completely shattered, and the dragon spear in his hand was broken inch by inch. Not only was blood spurting out wildly, but the emerald lizard dragon king he was riding was also implicated. Its whole body was drenched in blood, and at least 70% of its scales were shattered. Most importantly, Chun Gao had overexerted his magic power source, and his vitality was greatly damaged. Even if he recovered from his injuries, he would need at least a year to recover. In this battle, who would dare say that Ji Dong had lost? After all, he had fought against 1,000 people alone, and he had faced a fifth of the entire Annihilation Legion's combat power. Asterisk bang. Asterisk, Ji Dong's body landed heavily on the ground, leaving a large crater. Falling from a height of 100 meters, coupled with the weight and hardness of his Demon Lord Yin-Yang armor, his entire body was directly embedded in the soil. Chun Gao gasped for breath, and with every breath, blood gushed out from his mouth and nose. The injuries he had suffered were too severe, and he could not even muster a single ounce of strength at this moment. How could this be? How could this be? How could he explain such an outcome when he returned? The entire fourth main company of the Annihilation Legion had been completely annihilated by a six-crown magician. More than half of the Annihilation Battle Masters and Annihilation Battle Generals were injured, and he, the commander, was also seriously injured. The opponent was only one person and a six-crown level magician at that. If he was given a few more years, perhaps the outcome of the battle would be reversed. Kill him, cough cough, tear him to pieces for me, and avenge our brothers. Chun Gao struggled to speak. The situation was already like this. If this brat was allowed to live, how powerful would the person behind him be? He was already so terrifying. It was only when they heard Chun Gao's voice that the surviving members of the Annihilation Legion came to their senses. Ever since they became members of the Annihilation Legion, they had never encountered such a situation. It could be said that as long as the Annihilation Legion went to war, they would always be victorious. Even if they faced the trump card armies of other empires, they would only be slightly inferior. Something like this, where 90% of the Annihilation Legion's cavalry had been completely annihilated, was something they had never even imagined before, let alone seen before. Kill. A six-crown level Annihilation general suddenly leaped from his mount, the Lizard Dragon King, and rushed toward the place where Ji Dong had fallen. It was not that he did not want to urge his mount to attack, but that his Lizard Dragon King could no longer move. There were countless wounds on its body, and it had lost a large amount of blood. Whether it could survive was still a question. Every soldier of the Annihilation Legion was like one with their mount. It could be said that their mount was their second life. His mount had suffered such a heavy injury, and the Annihilation General's eyes were already bloodshot. His brain seemed to be boiling, and he wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Dong's bones and skin him alive. He pointed his spear forward, directly stabbing towards Ji Dong's position. He wanted to lift Ji Dong into the air and then tear him to pieces. But at this moment, a golden figure suddenly separated from Ji Dong's body and rose into the air. With the intense and sharp cry of the phoenix, the vast, violent ultimate yang flames erupted in the air. A huge, golden, flaming phoenix suddenly separated from Hua Er's body and lunged towards the Annihilation General. Although Hua was only a Class 6 magical beast, she was already extremely close to a Class 7 magical beast. She also possessed the same ultimate yang flames as Ji Dong, so in terms of pure mana, she was not much weaker than Ji Dong. Their souls were connected, so she could clearly sense Ji Dong's current heavy injuries. Even when he was on the Sacred Evil Island, Ji Dong's injuries had not been as severe. How could Hua, who had long since treated him as family, not be furious? The resplendent, golden, flaming phoenix caused large ripples in the air. The Annihilation General, who was already injured, only had time to release his mana from his body. In the next moment, his body had already been completely swallowed by the figure of the phoenix. He turned to dust in the air and disappeared. What Hua had used was a killing move that she had comprehended herself, the Phoenix Clone Slash. She used her tremendous mana to split off a body of ultimate yang flames that was the same as her body to launch an attack. Although its power could not compare to Ji Dong's brilliant Sunall, it was not much weaker. After all, this was a killing move that Hua and Ji-dong had comprehended after working together many times with the Phoenix Dance of the Brilliant Sun All. Not only did Hua-er's killing of Annihilation General not cause the Demon Masters of the Annihilation Army to cower, but it had instead ignited the fury in their hearts. Figure after figure pounced forward at the same time. They no longer worked together and only attacked with all their might. Destroying Ji-dong and Hua was their only goal. At this moment, Ji-dong had just struggled to climb out of the pit. His tough body had withstood most of the impact, but the clash of mana from before had also caused great damage to him. If it were not for his fire of the soul and the Phoenix Dance of the Dragon Serpent transformation, he would have died long ago. Although his physical injuries were not too severe, the mana in his body had been completely exhausted. It was as if his entire body had been sucked dry, and he could not gather any mana at all. Chapter 222. He could not help but clench his fists as he watched the Annihilation Legion's magicians pounce on him. Even in this situation, he was not the least bit timid or afraid. Even if he had no magic, even if he had to rely on the last bit of his physical strength, he must fight to the end. At this moment, a bright red light quietly rose in front of Ji-dong, and an extremely cold voice sounded in his ear. "Recover your magic here. Leave the rest to me." A golden figure took a step forward, emitting a chilling aura that caused Ji-dong to involuntarily shiver. There was already another person in front of him. The golden armor covered her whole body, and not a bit of her skin was exposed. The moment she appeared, the temperature in the air dropped significantly, in sharp contrast to the fiery fire in the air. Ajin did not take the initiative to attack. She just stood quietly in front of Ji-dong. Seeing her appear, Fire let out a long cry of joy and spread her wings. The intense pressure of the dual flames instantly burst out. From the perspective of her own ability, Fire's attack and defense were not her strong points. Her strongest point was to control the field and control the entire scene. The attribute suppression that she exerted was even more effective than Ji-dong's. This was because the attribute suppression effect that she released was almost constant. Within the coverage of her magic, everyone inevitably had to bear the same intensity of pressure. On the other hand, Ji-dong's attribute suppression was mainly aimed at his opponents. Within the range, they were strong and weak. Fire's attribute suppression made the Annihilation Demon Masters who rushed up stagnate, and the aura of the first wood magic emitted from their bodies weaken a bit. They had consumed a lot of magic in the battle with Ji-dong before, and they were not in their best condition. At this time, they were relying on numbers and their murderous fighting spirit. Fire flew high, causing them to lose their target of attack. All eyes were focused on Ajin, who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Seeing Ajin, Chun Longao's pupils shrank a bit. If Ji-dong was like an erupting volcano in his eyes, then the golden-armored female warrior in front of him was like an eternal iceberg. The danger she exuded was no less than Ji-dong's, and the cold, murderous aura was even more obvious than Ji-dong's. Ajin raised her arms slightly by her sides, and an intense golden light filled with a metallic aura surged out. With a buzzing sound, two beams of golden light shot out from her hands and instantly condensed into two 3-foot-long swords. If it wasn't for the fact that these two swords were condensed from magic power, when they appeared in Ajin's hands, they were no different from real swords. Chun Longao couldn't help but say, "Metal transformation, ever-changing." A black 6-crown crown quietly appeared above Ajin's head. Almost in the blink of an eye, the black crown turned into the same golden color as the magic on her body. Ji-dong's ultimate Yang Fire was also golden color, but it was a gold that no one dared to look at. It was a gold that was full of flamboyant and scorching aura. However, the gold that Ajin gave off was full of metallic luster. It was cold and eerie, giving people a different feeling. The strangest thing was that this gold was actually transparent, as if it was condensed from starlight. The first Annihilation Warrior had already rushed up. Although their attributes were suppressed, these warriors of the Annihilation Army would not flinch in the face of orders. This Annihilation Warrior was lucky in the previous battle. Except for the consumption of magic, he and his mount were both unharmed. The huge lizard dragon king under him raised its upper body and pressed down with its body at the same time, becoming one with the dragon. The spear in its hand carried the remaining momentum and the huge firstwood magic, which turned into 3 green cold stars, aimed at 3 vital points on Ajin's body. Ding, ding, ding. 3 clanging sounds rang out almost at the same time. The lizard dragon king crashed to the ground, but the annihilation warrior on its back was already stunned. Although his spear was not as long as Chun Longao's dragon spear, it was still more than 5 meters long. But at this moment, in his hand, it was less than 2 meters long. He did not even see how Ajin had attacked. The Annihilation generals and Annihilation battle masters were already closing in on them from all directions, but Ajin's cold aura completely exploded in that instant. A bone-chilling cold instantly rose in the hearts of every Annihilation Legion soldier. They were suppressed by little flame and could only use 70% of their magic power. That's right, it was another elemental suppression. However, this time, it was not the elemental suppression of extreme yin-yang fire, but extreme metal instead. Ultimate yang fire, ultimate yin fire, ultimate metal. What was the effect of the triple attribute suppression? If it was Chan Longgao, who was in 8 champions, his strength would at most be suppressed by about 20%. But none of the people in front of them had magic power that was stronger than Ajin's. Under the triple suppression, in addition to the fact that metal and fire could suppress the wood element, the Annihilation Army's strength was actually suppressed to less than 50%. At this moment, a strange scene appeared. Ajin's body did not advance, but instead retreated. She turned into a golden light and crashed backwards. Her target was not the enemy, but Ji Dong. Ajin's speed was too fast. Without the support of magic power, Ji Dong could not dodge in time, even if he wanted to. There was a flash of light, and he felt his body turn cold. His entire body was already surrounded by a cold metal. The people of the Annihilation Army clearly saw a ball of golden light erupt from Ajin's body. With a series of clanging sounds, the armor on her back actually melted on its own. Then, it completely enveloped Ji Dong in the golden light and fused into her armor. The 7th metal was Yang metal. Its most powerful enemy was its offensive power. Just like how 3rd fire had the strongest explosive power of the 10 elements, Ajin had 8th metal. 8th metal did not have the violent and direct destructive power and penetrative power of 7th metal, but it had the ability to change that 7th metal could not compare to. Just like refined steel turning soft, when an 8th metal type Devil Master cultivated to a certain level, any metal that fell into their hands could produce a myriad of changes. Put your arms around me. Ajin's cold voice rang in Ji Dong's ears. In the next moment, a warm and delicate body had already leaned into his arms. Compared to the coldness she exuded from her appearance, Ajin's body was warm. Instinctively, Ji Dong closed his arms around Ajin's shockingly flexible and delicate body. The golden armor on Ajin's body had clearly become thinner. This was because she was no longer alone in this armor. Ji Dong was also in it. There were too many enemies. This was the only way she could better protect Ji Dong from harm. The moment Ji Dong hugged Ajin, other than marveling at Ajin's control over metal, he immediately understood her thoughts. Thus, he immediately put away the fire element crystal in his hand that was used to recover magic. He used the trace of magic that he had just recovered to put away the Jun Mo yin-yang armor. It was not that he did not want to recover his magic, but because if he continued to recover magic through the crystal, he would definitely emit fire element. Fire countered metal, and his fire element would undoubtedly affect Ajin. Not knowing how long it would take for his magic to recover, and with Ajin protecting him in the armor, Ji Dong could only trust the murderous woman in his arms. Ajin's body trembled slightly when she was hugged by Ji Dong's powerful arms. Although it was very subtle, Ji Dong, who was pressed closely against her body, could still clearly feel the change in her. He could not help but laugh inwardly. So you're still human and can feel things. At that moment, under the golden armor, The two of them looked extremely intimate. Other than Ji Dong's arms around Jin's waist, the other parts of their bodies were pressed tightly against each other under the restraints of the armor. This was the only way to reduce Ji Dong's agility to Jin's body. Even Ji Dong's face was buried deep in Jin's long, wavy hair. After doing all this, it only took 2 blinks of an eye. In the next moment, Jin's body arched and shot up like an arrow. She retreated and advanced. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water and as fast as lightning. However, the one who suffered the most from this move was not the enemy, but Ji Dong. Jin was extremely tall, even slightly taller than the flaming bar. She was basically on the same level as Ji Dong, so when their bodies were pressed against each other, they were also on the same level. As she arched her body, her extremely round and elastic buttocks pressed tightly against Ji Dong's lower body. In the next moment, she shot out and tightened her body. Her buttocks actually clamped onto a rather protruding part of Ji Dong's body. The soft, warm, and elastic friction almost caused Ji Dong to cry out. Of course, he knew that Jin did not do this on purpose, but he was a normal man. His body suddenly tightened, and blood flowed downwards, instantly rushing towards the protruding part. Oh my God, this is too embarrassing. Ji Dong wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. He would rather face the enemies of the Annihilation Army than be in such an awkward situation. While Ji Dong was in an awkward situation, Jin's tyrannical attack had already been launched. The golden light left an afterimage and suddenly descended in front of the weaponless Annihilation General. Her hands turned into 2 golden long swords and slashed out in a crisscross manner. All the Annihilation General could do was subconsciously raise the broken spear in his hand to block. There was already despair in his eyes. They were both 6-crown demon masters, but Jin possessed ultimate demon power. In addition, her opponent had already used up a lot of demon power previously, and now she could only use 50% of her strength due to the suppression of her attributes. No matter what, the Annihilation General could not block this attack. However, something strange happened. Jin's unstoppable attack, which had been condensed with a cold, murderous aura, suddenly fell into disarray. Her speed also slowed down a little, and she let out a muffled groan. The Annihilation General had rich battle experience. In this moment of opportunity, the ground lizard dragon king suddenly raised its body, and its huge head directly rammed into Jin's chest. Clenching her teeth, Jin's 2 swords that were originally attacking the Annihilation General came together in the air. Golden light shone brightly, and it actually turned into a 5-foot-long knife. Golden lightning flashed and disappeared, and Jin's body also took the opportunity to retreat to the side. The golden light remained from the ground lizard dragon king's forehead to its lower body. It was only when Jin's body leaped out that there was a burst of blood. Its hard head was forcibly cut in half, and its huge body fell to the ground with a loud crash. The Annihilation General, who had just survived, rolled on the ground. He could no longer care about his mount. How lucky he was to be able to keep his life. Do you want to die? Jin's cold voice was completely squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. Why did her movements suddenly become erratic? There was suddenly a hard object between her buttocks. Anyone would not be able to stand it. She had never let a man get so close to her. If it wasn't for the Flaming Bar's order, she would not have used this method to save Ji Dong, who knew that this bastard behind her would, even though there were 2 layers of clothes between them. That hard object was so scorching hot. It constantly invaded her delicate anus, which no one had ever touched before. Jin's entire body was a little numb. If she had a choice, she really wanted to throw Ji Dong out and cut off that source of evil. At this moment, even if Ji Dong wanted to explain, he could not do it. His face was pressed against Jin's long hair. He could only smell that faint, elegant fragrance. He could not even struggle free, let alone speak. Let me die. This was the only thing Ji Dong wanted to say. The muscles on her buttocks moved slightly. With her outstanding control over her body, Jin forcibly squeezed that hard object out. It was at this moment that Ji Dong, a virgin, almost surrendered. Jean heaved a sigh of relief. She no longer dared to relax her muscles. She vented all her shame and anger on the warriors of the Annihilation Army before her. A golden bolt of lightning kept jumping in the air. Wherever it passed, a cold golden light flashed. Be it the Annihilation Battle Master or the Annihilation Battle General, none of them were a match for it. Wherever it passed, only corpses and severed limbs were left behind. In terms of overall strength, Jidong was superior to Ajin. However, in terms of killing techniques, Jidong was ashamed of his inferiority. Even though he could not see, he could sense Ajin's valiance in battle through the fire of the soul. The golden light was ever-changing in the air. Sometimes it was a sword, and sometimes it was a saber. Sometimes it would even suddenly turn into a spear or a shield. Every time it was needed, it would produce the most miraculous changes and cause great chaos in the Annihilation Army. Although the Annihilation Army was good at teamwork, how effective could their teamwork be when some of their warriors' mounts were injured? Moreover, Ajin's figure did not pause at all. She was always moving at high speed. She would never give more than 2 enemies a chance to surround her. She would retreat after a single strike and flee far away. Regardless of the results of her attack, she would never linger in battle. Although there were many enemies, when facing her, everyone felt like they were fighting alone. Chapter 2:23. If Jidong was said to be a monarch who intimidated the world, then Ajin was like a king of killers who had no human emotions. The screams of her enemies only served to intensify her viciousness. Not only did she have a deep understanding of the human body, but she also had a deep understanding of the bodies of magical beasts. Every time she attacked, she would aim for the vital parts of her enemies. However, the Annihilation Legion also displayed their valiant combat strength. Under Chun Longao's orders, although the Annihilation Legion's combat masters and generals were constantly dying in Ajin's hands, Ajin could not break out of their encirclement. Whenever one died, the next would immediately take his place and attack him continuously. Only now did Lucar crawl out from under his mount, the Bramblewood Demon Dragon. He looked as pathetic as one could imagine. His armor was already stained red by the Bramblewood Demon Dragon's blood. In the end, Lucar still managed to dodge the Sun-Moon Yin-Yang Boundaries attack. Relying on the Bramblewood Demon Dragon's huge body, he completely blocked the aftermath of the Sun-Moon Yin-Yang Boundary and the Azure Dragon God's descent. The Bramblewood Demon Dragon was on the verge of death, but Lucar was completely unharmed. Chun Longao looked at this fellow with disdain and bellowed angrily. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it." Although Chun Longao was extremely disdainful of Lucar using his mount to block the disaster, he had no choice but to ask him for help. Seeing so many of his soldiers die, his heart was bleeding. The strength of the Annihilation Legion was built on countless painstaking efforts. Not only was it financial, but it also required a lot of time. For example, the Annihilation Heavy Cavalry. Although they were not Devil Masters, they were selected from childhood and trained from the age of 10. They lived together with their mounts. After at least 15 years of nurturing, training, actual combat, and killing, they could be regarded as qualified Annihilation Heavy Cavalry. As for the Annihilation Battle Masters and Annihilation Battle Generals, they were trained through countless hardships. It could be said that they were all built with money and time. Every death of one of them was a great blow to the Dongmu Empire. Moreover, there were less than 100 of them left in the Annihilation Legion today. Even Prince Tianlu could not bear such a crime. Moreover, under such circumstances, if they could not kill all the enemies and let go of Jidong, who possessed ultimate magic power with an extremely strong backing, then it would bring disaster to the entire Dongmu Empire. Among the people present, besides him, the strongest was Lucar. When Lucar saw Ajin in his golden armor, he could not help but be stunned for a moment. Because the armor was wrapped around Jidong, it looked very bloated, but its terrifying combat strength still shocked Lucar. When he turned his head, he was shocked to find that less than a third of his subordinates were still alive, and most of them were injured. They did not have the protection of the Annihilation Legion's magic power armor. Although they did not suffer the direct attack of the ultimate killing technique, The aftermath of the two ultimate killing techniques still caused great damage to the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce's Devil Masters. The tragic state of the Annihilation Legion shocked Lu Kar even more. He could not help but say to Chen Gao, "Lord Celestial Master, why don't we retreat?" "Nonsense." With a wah sound, Chen Gao spat out another mouthful of blood and cursed angrily. "Don't you know the consequences of letting these two people go? Do you want our motherland to suffer the attack of two supreme masters? If we don't kill these two people, we will be the sinners of the Empire. Go up and hold her back. As long as the Annihilation Legion has a moment to prepare, I will definitely make them die without a burial ground." Lu Kar cursed inwardly. After bragging for so long, the losses are still so great. Did you not have enough time to prepare? I am just a merchant, not here to fight to the death. However, under Chen Longyao's burning gaze, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and jump out. He could not afford to offend the Annihilation Legion. After all, the 7 crowns were the 7 crowns. With Lu Kar's participation, the situation on the battlefield immediately changed. In terms of battle experience and willpower, Bell could not compare to the Annihilation Legion. The only things he was stronger in were his magic power and cunning. As soon as he jumped into the battlefield, Lu Kar immediately felt the huge impact of the triple magic attribute suppression. Even though he was a 7 crowns powerhouse, under this triple suppression, he could only use 60% of his magic power. This was clearly the biggest obstacle restricting the entire Annihilation Legion. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and Lu Kar desperately poured magic power into the spear in his hand. Instead of attacking Ajin, as Chen Longao had said, he aimed at the sky. Fire floated hundreds of meters in the air. Although it did not join the battle, it was clearly more useful in this kind of team battle because it was wholeheartedly releasing the attribute suppression. A transparent cyan color engulfed his whole body, and Lu Kar quickly released the elemental body. He desperately gathered and squeezed every drop of first wood magic, condensing all of it on the spear in his hand. In the time of a few breaths, the spear in Lu Kar's hand had completely turned turquoise. The green was bright and beautiful, so gorgeous that it made people drool. There were many kinds of emerald green, ordinary oil green, pea green, slightly better grass green, dark green, blue green, clear green, and blue green. At this time, the color of the spear in Lu Kar's hand was a touch of sun green, second only to emerald and imperial green. It was a rich sun green. Seeing the color of the spear in his hand, Chen Longyao's wrinkled eyebrows could not help but relax a little. The next moment, Lu Kar had already looked up and suddenly leaped up. Without making any sound, the spear in his hand had already appeared. The sun green broke through the air and rose to the sky. It was not until the moment the spear was released from Lu Kar's hand that fire in the air suddenly realized. When it reacted, it was already half a beat too late. It was not enough to release a sure-kill level attack. It could only flap its wings with all its strength, and the ultimate dual fire burst out in an instant. The two flames condensed into one in the air, and the effect of the combination's skill exploded. In the midst of the loud bang, the sun-green spear in the air was shattered by the ultimate dual fire released by fire with all its strength. However, this was, after all, the full strength attack of the 7 Crown Demon Master. Fire's current strength was not as good as the 7 Crown Demon Master, not to mention the insidious Lu Kar. This attack had been accumulating power for a long time, and it was suddenly released with all its strength. Although the body of the long spear had been shattered, the beam of green light had forcefully broken through the explosive power of the ultimate dual flame fusion skill and pierced through Hua-Er's body. Hua-Er's final reaction was to dodge to the side. The beam of green light seemed to have pierced through the area between her chest and the base of her wings. The green light scattered in the air, and at the same time, it exploded into a large cloud of blood. Hua let out a mournful cry and was no longer able to maintain flight. Her body glided through the air and fell into the forest not far away. Bastard! Jidong's soul was connected to fires, so he naturally felt the danger that fires encountered. However, at this moment, He could not control his body. He was restrained within Jin's armor and could not move. In his sudden rage, his body tightened, and the protrusion that was constantly rubbing against his perky buttocks suddenly straightened as his body tightened, and once again invaded the warm, perky buttocks. Jin's body trembled, and her movements went out of shape again. Finally, for the first time, she was successfully attacked by 2 Annihilation Generals. Furthermore, at this moment, Fire's heavy injuries had caused her to lose the suppression of the ultimate dual fire element, allowing the Annihilation General's magic to recover greatly. Jin only had time to block one of the dragon spears, and the other dragon spear heavily struck her body, sending her and Ji-dong flying. "Let me out. I'm going to put out the fire." Stuck close to Jin's golden hair, Ji-dong spoke in an indistinct voice. Jin could clearly feel that Ji-dong's body was trembling in anger and worry. She could no longer be bothered to blame that thing that was causing trouble, and braced herself to deal with the Annihilation Army. If you go to save her, you'll only be throwing your life away. In the midst of the chaos, she did not forget to respond to Ji-dong. "Hurry and let me out." To Ji-dong, although Fire's a magical beast, she was like his younger sister. How could he just watch his Fire's heavy injuries and not save her? In order to get Jin to let him out, he deliberately moved his body forward this time. For a moment, Jin was both embarrassed and angry, but she could not disobey the Flaming Bar's orders. She quickly dodged the enemy's attacks, and her figure finally became disorderly. Without the suppression of the dual fire elements, the Annihilation Army's combat power gradually recovered, and their teamwork became better. The most abominable was Carr. Although this fellow still attacked directly, he took out a spear from his demonic storage device and condensed mana again. His target was obviously Jin, and he posed a great threat. A 7-crown Demon Master was ready to launch a sneak attack at any time. No one wanted to face that. The situation, which was initially advantageous and was about to break out of the encirclement, became extremely disadvantageous again. Although Jin was not weak, she did not have a powerful ultimate skill that could decide the outcome of the battle like Ji-dong. After losing the suppression of the ultimate magic power of 3 attributes, the Annihilation Army gradually recovered their coordination in all aspects as they surrounded Jin and besieged her from all sides. The suppression from multiple attacks gradually intensified, and the tyrannical attack power was becoming more and more difficult for Jin to endure. Jin did not make a sound as she resisted with all her might. Every time she attacked, she still possessed great destructive power and would definitely cause casualties to the Annihilation Army. However, her body was being attacked more and more. Although the golden armor on her body was of excellent quality and blocked most of the attacks for her, her own consumption was also increasing. Both Jin and Ji-dong knew very well that Carr was waiting for an opportunity. Once the opportunity came, the spear in his hand that had once again condensed a sun-green light would deal a fatal blow to Ji-dong and Jin. It was precisely because of the existence of this threat that Jin had to preserve some of her strength and be ready to respond at any time. This made it even more difficult for her to break out of the encirclement. What should she do? Ji-dong's heart was filled with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He deeply regretted not starting to make the magic skill wine earlier. If he had succeeded in making the magic skill wine, the current situation would have been much easier to deal with. He was most worried about Hua-er's safety. However, no matter how much he struggled, no matter how he tried to violate Jin's sensitive parts, Jin refused to let him leave the armor. At this moment, a scorching heat suddenly ignited in Ji-dong's chest without any warning. Ji-dong felt as if something in his body had awakened. His soul fire throbbed violently, and waves of dense fire element continuously burst forth from the soul fire, replenishing his thirsty body at an unparalleled speed. The dense fire element also affected Jin's body, especially where their lower bodies were closely connected. Jin panicked. She was truly afraid that the clothes that were barely keeping their bodies from touching would suddenly burn. If that was the case, she wanted nothing more than to die immediately. Fortunately, It was also at this moment that a familiar and dignified voice rang out in Ah Jin's mind. As if she had been granted amnesty, Ah Jin's body trembled, and hundreds of golden rays of light burst forth. She forcefully evaded the Annihilation Army soldiers who were surrounding her. Golden light flowed, and the armor on her back split open, sending Ji Dong flying. At this moment, Lu Kar, who had been waiting for an opportunity, made his move. A sun-green light streaked through the sky once again, almost burrowing through the gaps between the Annihilation Army soldiers and heading straight for Ah Jin. Lu Kar had chosen to attack Ah Jin after careful consideration. Ji Dong had released his killing move earlier and was already at the end of his rope. He had no more attacking power left. As long as he killed Ah Jin, who was protecting him, this battle would be over. His attack was cunning and sinister, but unfortunately, he did not realize this. If he was not confident, would Ah Jin, who had come to protect Ji Dong, let him out? A huge claw covered in golden fish scales silently reached out from Ji Dong's chest. The claw was so huge that it almost covered Ji Dong's entire body. The huge claw reached out like lightning and grabbed the sun-green spear in midair. Boom! Intense and scorching golden flames erupted from the sun-green spear. It was as if the demonic power released by Lu Kar had become the fuel for the extreme yang fire. The extreme yang fire, which was even stronger than Ji Dong's at his peak, made everyone, including Ah Jin, feel suffocated. A distant and vigorous dragon roar rang out from Ji Dong's chest. A huge body appeared out of thin air, as if it had disintegrated from his body. With a flick of the giant claw, the golden spear was instantly shattered into countless golden fragments that scattered in all directions. The dozen or so Annihilation Combat Masters who were closest to the spear were instantly turned into a dozen or so fireballs, screaming in agony as they were sent flying in all directions. In the next moment, their bodies had already been reduced to ashes, and the deafening dragon roar suddenly split from one to two, one impassioned and the other deep and solemn. Chapter 2:24. That huge body finally separated from Ji Dong's body, and Ji Dong's body was flung up and landed on its back. Seeing this huge creature that suddenly appeared, both the Extermination Army and the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce could not believe their eyes. The most direct effect of its appearance was that all the ground lizard dragons present, including the ground lizard dragon king, fell to the ground. These well-trained, magical beasts no longer had any will to fight. All of them crawled on the ground and trembled violently, as if they had sensed an extremely terrifying aura. These ground lizard dragons did not behave like this even when they were facing the collision of the two ultimate killing techniques. But now, this situation had happened for real. Apart from Ji Dong, everyone else, including Ajin, thought that the creature that had suddenly separated from Ji Dong's body was a monster. That's right, it was a monster. It had the eyes of a shrimp, antlers of a deer, a mouth of a cow, a nose of a dog, a whisker of a catfish, a mane of a lion, a tail of a snake, fish scales, and claws of an eagle. The most peculiar thing was that half of its body was black and the other half was white. Starting from its neck, it had 2 heads and 9 claws under its abdomen. It was also half black and half white, and it didn't have wings. However, it just happened to float in midair. Humans couldn't sense anything from it, but the lizard dragons could clearly sense the aura of a dragon emperor. The one who was most shocked by its appearance was Ji Dong himself. Looking at the 12-meter-long behemoth beneath him, he only felt a sense of familiarity. That's right, familiarity, because this creature, which was a monster to others, was the symbol of his country in his previous life, the divine dragon of Huaxia. In Ji Dong's heart, the dragons in this world were just lizards that could fly. Only the one he was riding on had the appearance of a dragon. But why did it have 2 heads and 9 claws? Sitting on its back, not only did Ji Dong feel that his mana was recovering at a terrifying rate, but he also felt an indescribable connection with his flesh and blood, as if this dragon was a part of his body. Ji Dong, don't be surprised. This dragon inherited your bloody face and is connected to your soul. It's your blood, soul, and chaotic energy that hastened its growth. It has the same mana as you, and in addition to the unique power of the Dragon Clan, it was born with level 8 mana. Its appearance is also completely based on the image that your soul wants it to transform into. The ultimate dual fire with chaos as its core is called the Sacred Fire. It was also evolved through your soul and blood, so I gave it a scientific name, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. The Flaming Bar's voice was still as pleasant as ever, as if everything was as it should be. All of a sudden, Ji-Dong had a feeling that the Flaming Bar seemed to be in control of the entire battle. From his battle with Chun-Long Ao to the use of his ultimate killing technique, every time he encountered a crisis that he could not handle, an opportunity would immediately appear. This opportunity came from the Flaming Bar. Ajin's appearance and the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's appearance were all like that. Two dragon roars rang out from the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's two huge mouths once again. With a deafening roar, an unparalleled pressure of dual fire descended from the sky. This time, not only did it suppress the enemy, but even the ultimate metal aura from Ajin's body was suppressed. If Hua was a gentle little girl, then the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon was a majestic magical beast emperor. They both had the pressure of dual fire, but it was completely different when it was released. It was the terrifying pressure of a monarch descending. Not only did the remaining generals and combat masters of the Annihilation Army have their mana suppressed, but even their bodies became sluggish. In the sky, everything within a 500-meter radius turned black and white. All the colors seemed to have disappeared at this moment, leaving only black and white. Demonic Domain. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's dual fire demonic domain. Just the release of this demonic domain proved that its mana was far above Ji-Dong's. A Class 8 magical beast was generally equivalent to a 7-crown demon master. Only an 8-crown demon master could release a demonic domain, but it had appeared on the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's body just like that. 2 dragon heads and 4 dragon eyes looked around. It was so arrogant, looking down at the enemy below with a look of contempt. However, it did not move. Ji-Dong could clearly feel that all of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's movements were connected to his soul. Its various abilities were also branded in the depths of Ji-Dong's soul. Only Ji-Dong's orders could make it attack. Since their souls were connected, there was no need for them to train or communicate verbally or physically. They could already cooperate perfectly. Retreat. Seeing the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon appear and feeling the terrifying dual fire demons and the powerful suppression of the domain, Chun-Long Gao could only give the order to retreat no matter how unwilling he was. Otherwise, he was certain that if this continued, the final outcome of this battle would be the complete annihilation of his army. His side no longer had the ability to fight against this Class 9 or Class 10 magical beast that had suddenly appeared. Relying on Lu Kar? That was no different from a fool's dream. He could only pray in his heart that the Annihilation Army would be able to bring back a portion of their strength if one less person from the Annihilation Army died. Ajin chased after the retreating soldiers from the Annihilation Army with lightning speed. Another 2 people were reduced to pieces by the golden light that erupted from her hands. Ji-Dong's voice rang out from the sky. Don't chase. Saving Hua is more important. If it were not for the fact that Hua was heavily injured, Ji-Dong would definitely have ridden the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon and annihilated the powerful enemies without any hesitation. However, he could clearly sense that Hua's life force was rapidly flowing away. Compared to killing the enemies, saving Hua was without a doubt more important. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon twisted its body. Although it had no wings, it seemed to be flying through the air. Not only was it completely silent, but it was also extremely fast. Its 12-meter-long body charged into the forest in a flash. Through the connection between Ji-Dong and Hua's souls, he found where Hua had fallen very quickly. Hua lay quietly on the ground as a large amount of blood gushed out from his body. A fist-sized hole had pierced through his chest, and his life force was rapidly draining away. His phoenix eyes, which were originally brimming with vigor, had now turned a grayish white. Ji-dong leaped down from the sacred evolution fire dragon's back and arrived at Hua-er's side in a single step. He picked Hua-er up and tears flowed from his eyes. Hua-er, you must hold on. You'll definitely be fine. Taking a deep breath, Ji-dong only hesitated for a moment. He gritted his teeth and pressed his hands on the piercing wounds on Hua-er's chest and back. He could not let Hua-er continue to bleed. If he lost any more blood, Hua-er would definitely die. A dazzling golden light flashed. Hua-er groaned and her head tilted to the side. She had already fainted. Ji-dong used his yang fire magic to temporarily seal her wounds. At the same time, he quickly took out a bottle of healing medicine that Yao Qianshu had given him. He poured the entire bottle into Hua-er's mouth and activated his magic. He carefully poured the medicine into Hua-er's body in an attempt to activate the medicine. However, when Ji-dong poured his magic into Hua-er's body, he discovered the severity of her injuries. Car's attack was not enough to harm Hua-er. However, after her body was pierced through, more than 30% of Hua-er's meridians were shattered. Her magic could not smoothly circulate and activate the medicine. If Hua-er did not have an extremely strong life force, she would have already died. Ji-dong thought about how Hua-er had experienced 3,000 years of pain and struggle in the egg before hatching. He thought about the deep relationship he had with Hua-er over the past few years. Sorrow surged in his heart, but he did not know what to do. Jin stood next to Ji-dong. She had initially planned to settle the score with Ji-dong immediately after the danger was over. However, when she saw Ji-dong hugging Hua-er so sorrowfully, she could not bring herself to say the words that were at the tip of her tongue. Take Hua-er back to the Earth's core. Leave everything to me. The Flaming Bar's voice appeared in Ji-dong's mind like a life-saving straw. Flaming Bar. Ji-dong immediately called out almost without hesitation. A red light blossomed and enveloped Ji-dong, Jin, and Hua-er's bodies. Only the sacred evolution fire dragon was left in the forest of life. Before Ji-dong left, he did not forget to tell the sacred evolution fire dragon to stay here. If any enemies invaded again, they were to be killed without mercy. Ji-dong should have been extremely excited to obtain such a powerful mount. After all, this was what he had always hoped for. However, how could he be excited when Hua-er was so heavily injured? When the scenery became clear again and they returned to the Earth's core, a white light had already enveloped them and engulfed Hua-er, who was in Ji-dong's arms. The Flaming Bar stood on the platform of the Earth's core. With a wave of her right hand, Hua-er, who was shrouded in white light, had already arrived in front of her. The Flaming Bar waved her hands and forcefully extracted the intense fire element from the magma in the Earth's core. She kept pouring it into Ji-dong's body. Ji-dong felt a warmth in his heart as he looked at her clear and pure gaze. The pain and sorrow he felt immediately lessened. The Flaming Bar said gently, "Don't worry, Hua-er will be fine with me here. She shares the same source of mana as us. With the flames of chaos, I can protect her life. Leave this place to me. I still need you to handle the matter with the forest demons. Ask them for a bottle of the source of life. With the help of the source of life, Hua-er's recovery will be faster and there won't be any side effects." After hearing the Flaming Bar's words, Ji-dong's eyes instantly lit up. That's right. Why didn't he think of the source of life? That was a treasure that could bring the dead back to life. Flaming Bar, I'll be going first. The Flaming Bar said, Jin, go with Ji-dong. His mana hasn't fully recovered yet. Help him. Jin's body trembled slightly. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. However, her delicate face hidden under the metal mask had already turned red. Even now, there was still a burning sensation between her plump and perky buttocks. When she thought of that embarrassing scene, even someone as tough as she couldn't help but feel weak all over. When Ji-dong and Jin returned to the Forest of Life, the sacred evolution fire dragon was soaring in the sky, coldly observing its surroundings. As soon as Ji-dong appeared, this incomparably powerful dragon with the appearance of a Huaxia divine dragon immediately leaped down and arrived in front of Jidong. After confirming that was fine, Jidong's mood relaxed a little. Only then did he have time to carefully observe his mount companion. The sacred evolution fire dragon was 90% similar to the Huaxia divine dragon in his memory. After all, in the country he was from in his previous life, all humans had the title of the dragon's descendant. How could he not feel a sense of familiarity when he saw the Huaxia divine dragon? The only thing that puzzled Jidong was that the sacred evolution fire dragon actually had 9 claws and not 5 as he remembered. Having 2 heads and 9 claws should have been an extremely strange sight, but the sacred evolution fire dragon's 12-meter-long body seemed extremely coordinated. Its distinct black and white body did not give off a sense of strangeness. Only its powerful aura would make one feel suffocated. Of course, to Jidong, this feeling became a sense of familiarity. The dragon's arrogant eyes stared at Jidong with a gentle light. Its 2 large heads lowered in front of Jidong and gently rubbed against his body. Both hands caressed one of the dragon's heads. Jidong finally smiled and said, "The flaming bar has given you the scientific name of the sacred evolution fire dragon. Let me give you a name. If I remember correctly, the flaming bar mentioned that you were girls when they asked for you from the frost dragon Ice Frost. Let me think, what name should I give you?" Before he finished speaking, 2 strong consciousnesses suddenly appeared in Jidong's soul. He was slightly stunned and was surprised to find that the 2 consciousnesses came from the black and white heads respectively. Each head of the sacred evolution fire dragon had its own thoughts. Jidong could not help but be curious about this discovery. Could it be that they were twins before their forms were changed? At that moment, both dragon heads were asking Hyoheim to give them their own names instead of a unified name. Initially, Jidong had casually named Little Flame. He felt that it sounded good. However, he could not name the sacred evolution fire dragon so easily. This was because the sacred evolution fire dragon could be said to be the embodiment of his memories from his past life. The image of the divine dragon of Huaxia was so familiar. He had to give it a name that was related to his past life. One of them is called Little Black, and the other, Little White. Ajin said coldly. Hearing her words, the 2 dragon heads of the sacred evolution fire dragon roared at the same time. They glared at Ajin with extreme dissatisfaction. If Ajin and Jidong were not on the same side, Jidong did not doubt that they would have immediately unleashed the terrifying coercion from the demon territory. Ajin snorted and said, "What are you shouting for? None of you are good. You are just like your master." Jidong looked at Ajin awkwardly. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and he said, "I know what to call them." Chapter 2:25. Looking at the 2 giant dragon heads, Jidong had a flash of inspiration. He said, "Let's call one Maodai and the other Wuliangye." Ajin was stunned. What are they called? The black and white dragon heads were also looking at Jidong in confusion. Jidong said, "These are the names of the best wines in the world. They're perfect for the 2 of you." In his previous life, he was the god of wine, and Maotai and Wuliangye were the names of these 2 wines. These 2 wines were the best in his country in his previous life, and could be called the national wines. Unfortunately, after coming to this world, he would never be able to taste these 2 wines again. He also did not know the brewing method. Giving this sacred evolution fire dragon such a name was a kind of nostalgia for his previous life, and also for these 2 excellent wines. Perhaps because they sensed the change in Jidong's mood, the 2 dragon heads roared at the same time. Even though they didn't understand the meaning of Maodai and Wuliangye, they could feel the nostalgia in Jidong's heart and accepted their new names. White Dragon with Extreme Yang Fire, your Maotai, and Black Dragon with Extreme Yin Fire, your Wuliangye. Let's go. Let's catch up with those forest monsters and get a bottle of life force to heal her. While talking, Jidong leaped up and landed on the place where the 2 dragon heads met. Maotai and Wuliangye roared at the same time and were about to fly up when Jidong stopped them. Ajin, you come up too. Jidong said to Ajin. He was a little embarrassed about Ajin. Even though he didn't do it on purpose, he still violated Ajin. Moreover, Ajin had appeared to save him. Ajin snorted and said, "What's so special about that? I won't be slower than you on the ground." With that, He ignored Ji-dong and turned to fly away. He turned into a golden shadow and disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. Ji-dong sighed in his heart. He was afraid that this misunderstanding would not be easy to explain because he simply could not bring himself to say it. Only then did the sacred evolution fire dragon soar into the sky. Its huge tail whipped the air, its 9 claws spread out as it flew out. It wasn't difficult to find the forest demons. Apart from the 20,000 elderly forest demons that had been sacrificed, there were still tens of thousands of them left. Moreover, they weren't fast to begin with, so it didn't take long for Ji-dong to catch up. Ji-dong was surprised to find that, for some reason, tens of thousands of old forest monsters had stopped. When the sacred evolution fire dragon appeared above their heads, the old forest monsters couldn't help but raise their heads in fear. When they saw the sacred evolution fire dragon's strange appearance, they could only think of enemies. The forest demons only calmed down when the sacred fire dragon landed and Ji-dong jumped off its back. "Great King, come take a look. Elder Odom is..." The forest demons could naturally guess the outcome of the battle when they saw Ji-dong. They also changed the way they addressed Ji-dong. Ji-dong's heart tightened. He quickly followed the path that the forest demons had parted and entered the forest. Soon, he saw Elder Odom lying on the ground with a pale face. Odom's chest was slightly bulging. An elderly forest demon was feeding him the source of life. However, Ji-dong could clearly feel that even the source of life could not stop Odom's life force from flowing away. Perhaps it was the jealousy of the heavens that the forest demons created the peerless brew, the source of life. However, their body's ability to absorb the source of life was far inferior to that of humans. For them, the source of life could not prolong their lives at all. It could only increase their life force by a little. Odom's dark eyes suddenly lit up when he saw Ji-dong. Even his complexion looked better. He struggled to sit up with the help of his clansmen. "King, the enemies, the enemies." Ji-dong hurriedly stepped forward and squatted down. He held Odom's trembling hand and said, "Elder, don't talk too much. Take a rest first. Don't worry, I've driven away the enemies." Mother Odom's expression immediately relaxed. That's good, that's good. "King, you saved us and the entire forest demon tribe. Fortunately, you came in time. Otherwise," Ji-dong said, "Elder Odom, your health is more important. Let's talk about the rest later." Ordo's mother gently shook his head. At this moment, he revealed his original wisdom and said, "King, I know my own body. Being able to see you and hear the good news that the enemies have retreated, I have no regrets even if I die. In the end, the forest demon tribe did not die in my hands. I can't hold on any longer. King, I've already given the order to pass the position of Chief Elder to Elder Tam. The future of the forest demon tribe is in your hands." He was already old in the first place, the oldest of the forest demon tribe. The sudden change and the constant high-intensity running had caused the violent emotional fluctuations in his body to finally reach its limit. Seeing Ji-dong's arrival and hearing the good news that the enemy had retreated, the obsession that connected him to the last thread of his life quietly dispersed. Ji-dong silently nodded and said, "Elder, don't worry. There are no more problems in the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. The magical beasts, they're willing to accept you. I've also established a connection with the Central Empire. I will definitely take revenge for the Forest Demon Tribe today. I will definitely destroy the Golden Eagle Merchant Group." Odom sighed and said, "No, King. Hatred isn't important. What's important is that the Forest Demon Tribe can continue. Meeting you is the greatest fortune of the Forest Demon Tribe. I also believe that you will definitely lead my tribe to find their future. Bury me in a new home. I want to see my tribe prosper. King, great King, thank you. Thank you." Tears flowed down Odom's face as his voice became softer and softer. Finally, a faint smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he slowly closed his eyes and passed away. Silence, a deathly silence. The forest demons in the innermost circle were the first to kneel on the ground. Soon after, a large number of forest demons knelt down as well. Odom, the venerable elder, had finally released the last bit of his essence for his tribe and left this world. Ji-dong carried Odom's corpse in his arms and slowly stood up. His lips were tightly pursed. At this moment, Ajin had also rushed over and stood silently behind him. Ji-dong didn't move for an entire minute. After a minute, he suddenly took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the ruthlessness in his heart. He said, "Forest demon elders, for the sake of Elder Odom's final wish, we can't rest yet. Continue forward and meet up with your tribe." The elderly forest demons slowly stood up. Odom had passed away, but they didn't cry. They only remained silent. This was a characteristic of the forest demon tribe. When their most beloved tribe member passed away, they would mourn in silence for a long time. Next, Ji-dong rode on the sacred evolution fire dragon and spent a whole 2 hours to find all the forest demons heading west. He gathered all the forest demon tribes and reunited them. Elder Odom's corpse was solemnly handed over to Elder Tam. At the same time, he also sent a bottle of Source of Life back to the Flaming Bar. After a day of suffering, the forest demons could finally rest. However, the entire forest demon tribe was filled with sorrow. Odom's death was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the tribe. However, they still had to continue on their path and migrate. For the continuation of their tribe, they had to be strong. Night fell. Ji-dong silently stood in the forest of life and silently looked up at the moonlight that could be seen through the gaps in the canopy. At this moment, he wasn't thinking about the battle to increase his combat experience. His mind was filled with all kinds of chaotic emotions, including memories of his past life and many other things. The sacred evolution fire dragon was sent back to the core of the earth. Without a doubt, the core lake was the most suitable place for it to live. Not only could it improve its cultivation there, but it could also smoothly teleport to Ji-dong's side at any time. With the soul connection and the formless establishment of the soul contract, Ji-dong could summon it at any time, even without the flaming bar releasing its mana. "What are you thinking about?" A cold voice rang out behind Ji-dong. Ajin had appeared behind him at some point. Ji-dong didn't turn around. He sighed and said, "I don't know what I'm thinking either. I'm sorry about what happened during the day. I didn't want to do that either. If you're still angry, you can beat me up to vent your anger. I won't fight back." Ajin had already taken off her helmet. Under the moonlight, her beautiful face blushed. She clamped her legs together unnaturally and said angrily, "Don't mention what happened during the day again. Don't ever mention it again, or I'll kill you." Ji-dong nodded and didn't say anything else. The two of them sank into silence. The night was as cold as water. Occasionally, there would be a light night breeze that rustled through the forest. Occasionally, there would be the chirping of insects and the chirping of birds, but it wouldn't break the peace of the forest. "Ajin, do you think there really are gods in this world?" Ji-dong suddenly asked. Ajin was stunned for a moment. There was something in her eyes. She nodded and said, "Of course there are." Ji-dong said angrily, "Nonsense. How can there be gods in this world? If there really are gods, why didn't the goddess of nature that the forest demon tribe worships come to their rescue when they were in danger? She just watched as thousands of forest demons died at the hands of their enemies. If we had come a day later, I'm afraid the forest demon tribe would have been completely erased from this world." Ajin said, "Even gods aren't omnipotent. They have their own difficulties, just like what?" Ji-dong turned around and asked. Ajin's expression suddenly turned cold. "Nothing. What do you plan to do next?" Ji-dong said, "I just want to send the forest demon tribe to the Earth Spirit Mountains safely. I don't want to see them suffer any more harm. I'm afraid the Golden Eagle Merchant Group won't be able to make a comeback anytime soon. The problem we have to face now is to pass through the borders of the Easternwood Empire. If the Easternwood Empire's guards dare to stop us, I won't rule out a massacre. You're not bloodthirsty." With that, Ajin turned around and left. Ji-dong couldn't help but feel a little dazed as he watched her leave. Is that so? Am I really not bloodthirsty? The next morning, Ji-dong led the forest demon tribe on their way after putting away all their sadness. The forest demons were extremely vast. The forest demons didn't have the ability to fly like Ji-dong. It would take them at least 5 days to get out of the forest. All the forest demons seemed very peaceful along the way. Ji-dong rode the sacred evolution fire dragon and soared in the sky. He kept an eye out for any signs of enemies in the forest of life. At the same time, he started trying to make the magic wine. After the battle with the Annihilation Army, he realized that his strength was insufficient. This was especially so when he encountered a large number of demon masters. A single person's strength was limited. Even a super ultimate skill might not be able to decide the outcome of the battle. Therefore, he had to become stronger and more powerful. Making the magic wine was more difficult than Ji-dong had imagined. The biggest problem was how to imprint the skill into the wine. Magic skill scrolls were created by using magic to engrave the corresponding patterns in magic arrays on special paper. However, how could magic arrays be engraved in wine? Liquid was not as stable as solid paper. It could flow. Ji-dong could temporarily imprint the magic wine into the wine, but the moment the wine moved in the bottle, the mana within would quickly disappear. He couldn't even use the skill. Ji-dong couldn't help but feel a little impatient after failing time and time again. The wine clearly contained enough fire element. With the addition of the fire element that he infused, the effect should be better than the scroll. However, if he couldn't retain the mana, everything would be in vain. Thinking and experimenting like this continued until the 5th day. When the forest demons were finally about to leave the forest of life, Ji-dong finally solved the problem. He had found the fundamental solution to the fusion of the wine and mana. The method was not difficult, but it was definitely not simple either. The wine would move, but the bottle that contained the wine would not change. He engraved a lasting magic circle at the bottom of the bottle, and then injected mana into the wine. With the lasting effect of the lasting magic circle, it formed a perfect cycle with the mana. Only then could he successfully store mana in the wine and not let it leak out. The most crucial problem was solved. What he had to do next was to keep trying to match his various skills with the different degrees of whiskey and brandy, and then integrate them into the wine. Making the magic wine was definitely more difficult than making the magic scroll. If one didn't have an extremely deep understanding of the characteristics of the wine, they wouldn't be able to perfectly control the fluctuations of the fire element in the wine. Relying on the 5 elements magic circle, his understanding of wine, and the detailed observation and exquisite control brought by the soul fire, Ji-dong's first magic wine was finally about to be produced the moment he walked out of the forest of life. After carving the lasting magic circle, he held a glass bottle that was only 5 inches tall in his hand. It was filled to the brim with whiskey. Extreme Yang fire element magic circle was poured into it. Ji-dong stepped forward with his left foot and held the glass bottle in his right hand. His entire body was weak as he twisted. He shouted, "Scorching Sun Devour." Chapter 2:26. Scorching Sunbite. With a loud shout, Ji-dong's entire body shone with golden light. His entire body was like a throbbing golden flame as he slid forward in an instant. As he slid forward, all the flames condensed in his right fist, and mana poured into the crystal wine bottle in his palm. Suddenly, the amber whiskey in the bottle shone brightly, and a yang fire sustaining magic circle carved at the bottom of the bottle appeared. Golden light flowed like a huge gem, and all the dancing flames poured into it. Strong magic elements rippled in it. At the same time, Ji-dong's right hand shook quickly, and his whole body spirit was completely focused on the bottle. The capped bottle danced up and down in his hand, and the originally strong yang fire elements gradually converged. The whiskey was still golden red, but the magic waves it emitted were getting weaker and weaker. Only the light emitted by the sustaining magic circle became more and more obvious. It's done. Scorching Sun Bite was only a basic skill that Ji-dong was good at, but as his power increased and he became familiar with this skill for many years, this skill was much more powerful than the hit skills of ordinary magicians. Ajin stood behind Ji-dong and watched him complete all this. When all the mana was retracted, a strange bottle of wine appeared in Ji-dong's hand. The sustaining matrix at the bottom of the bottle shone with golden light. The golden wine shone as it was refracted by the crystal bottle. It looked like a bottle of liquid that had melted gold. What is this? You've been making these things for the past few days. What's the use? Women were all curious, and Jin was no exception. She had wanted to ask what Ji Dong had been doing for the past few days, but because of her personality, she hadn't asked. It's done, Ji Dong shouted in surprise. The depression he had been feeling for the past few days seemed to dissipate with the success of this magic skill wine. He threw the bottle to Jin and said, "This is the magic skill wine I made. It's much prettier than magic skill scrolls, right? Try it." Jin took the bottle and looked at Ji Dong in confusion. He asked, "Magic skill wine? What is that?" Ji Dong said, "You can think of it as a magic scroll because it has the same effect as a magic scroll." Impossible. Although she had lost her memory, her battle instincts, and her understanding of magic skills had not disappeared at all. She had seen magic skill scrolls before, but she could not believe that the wine in front of her could have the same effect as a magic skill scroll. Moreover, it seemed that Ji Dong had made it very easily. Facts speak louder than words. How do you know it's impossible if you don't test it? The way to use it is very simple. You only need to inject a trace of your own magic to trigger it, and then smash it in front of you. Remember, the attack recorded inside will only be launched in front of you. With some curiosity and disbelief, Jin did as he said and injected a trace of magic into the wine bottle. Immediately, she clearly felt the wine bottle in her hand heat up, and she subconsciously threw the bottle to the ground. With a bang, the crystal wine bottle shattered, and a thick golden light instantly rose. Jin saw a golden figure appear in front of her. It did the same thing as Ji Dong did before. It stepped forward with its left foot, twisted its body, and threw a punch. The thick pure yang magic was not fake at all. Jin could also clearly feel the surging magic contained in this punch. Compared to a magic skill scroll, the effect was not much different. The only difference might be the thick fragrance of wine in the air. "It's done hot," Ji Dong cheered. After these days of trying and his unremitting efforts, he had finally made the magic skill wine. Although he was confident that it was only a standard skill, this was already a miracle. Before him, who could imprint magic skills in wine and use the wine to release skills? The only thing he was not sure now was whether the magic skill wine could be preserved as long as the scroll. Jin watched in shock as the golden light gradually disappeared. She subconsciously rubbed her eyes and said, "How did you do it?" Ji Dong smiled and said, "That's a secret. However, I can promise you that in the entire continent, including the Darkness continent, I'm the only one who can make a scroll like this." He was not exaggerating. In Jin's eyes, the process of making a scroll that looked very simple was actually quite complicated. First, Ji Dong had to carefully inscribe the perpetuation matrix on the bottle to ensure that it could be used. Then, he had to pour in whiskey with an appropriate alcohol content. When he was making the magic skill wine, the entire process of the skill had to be imprinted in the whiskey. The final shake was to make the magic skill wine completely fuse with the mana that he had poured in. Then, he had to use his powerful soul fire to activate his mental strength to control the perfect combination of the two. Only after successfully communicating with the perpetuation matrix would the magic skill, wine, be considered complete. If there was a slight problem in any of the steps, the wine would be completely ruined. The greatest advantage of the magic skill wine was its low production cost. It didn't require a large amount of crystal core powder and special paper to make magic skill scrolls. The cost of the crystal bottle, whiskey, and brandy was almost negligible when compared to the effect of the skill wine. Ji Dong had bought so many whiskey and brandy of various grades, but he had only spent a few thousand gold coins. On the current market, a standard exhaustion scroll was worth a few thousand gold coins. There was a demand for it, but no supply. After all, a scroll could save a life at a crucial moment. Back then, this was how Kar escaped from Ji Dong's hands. The forest demon tribes had gradually left the forest of life. Almost every forest demon couldn't help but turn back when they stepped out of the forest of life. Mournful cries could be heard from time to time. They were about to leave the forest of life, where countless generations of forest demons had lived. How could they bear to leave? This was their homeland. In the face of all this, Ji Dong was helpless. He could only watch silently, hoping that the forest demon tribe would walk out of this sorrow as soon as possible. He had already thought it through. In about 2 days' time, they would reach the border between the Middle-earth Empire and the Dongmu Empire. When they arrived, they would rush over under the cover of night. If they met any obstructions, they would kill them without mercy. With the strength of him and Ajin, as well as the sacred evolution fiery dragon, Mao Tai, and Wuliangye, even an army of army level would not be able to stop them. The continent had not been at war for many years. Even though it was the border between the two empires, the Dongmu Empire could not station too strong an army, and there would not be many devil masters. For the continuation of the forest demon tribe, Ji Dong couldn't care less. Leaping onto the back of the sacred evolution fiery dragon, Mao Tai and Wuliangye roared at the same time and soared into the sky. They exuded the feeling of a monarch descending upon the world. Every time he felt it, Ji Dong felt exceptionally comfortable. This was the majesty of the Yin Huang mystical dragon. They were born with the powerful strength of a level 8. Ji Dong did not doubt that in the near future, they could evolve to a level 10 or even a saint level. Just as the sacred evolution fiery dragon took Ji Dong into the sky, Ji Dong's gaze suddenly froze. He looked ahead, and a cold, murderous intent suddenly filled his eyes. At least 3,000 people had appeared in front of the army of forest demons without any warning. The moment these 3,000 people appeared, they gave Ji Dong a sense of extreme danger. Even though they were still a distance away, Ji Dong could already feel the majestic aura that they exuded. It was even more shocking than the aura that the Annihilation Army had exuded previously. The Annihilation Army was filled with a cold, murderous aura, very similar to Ajin's aura. But what these 3,000 people that had suddenly appeared exuded was a vast, majestic, and boundless aura that was as dense as a mountain range. The appearance of these 3,000 people did not make a single sound. Every one of them wore bright yellow full body armor. The heavy armor reflected a golden luster under the sunlight. Their tall and burly figures looked like an insurmountable moat. Moreover, these 3,000 people all had their own mounts. They were not the ground lizard dragons of the Annihilation Army, but a larger type of earth dragon whose entire body was earth and yellow. Ji Dong observed them carefully. These earth dragons were of the earth element, and they were called earth-shattering dragons. Even the most ordinary earth-shattering dragons were level 4 magical beasts, and they were a level higher than the ground lizard dragons. The one that attracted Ji Dong's attention right at the front was a giant dragon with transparent scales that reflected the sunlight. This dragon was not some earth dragon, but a true dragon. Its body was 10 meters long, and its huge wings spread out, making its body even more dazzling. It was actually one of the most powerful earth element magical beasts, the rare diamond dragon. It should be known that the earth-shattering dragons only had a little of the diamond dragon's bloodline. Although the diamond dragon in front of them was not a complete level 10 magical beast, it was at least a level 9 magical beast. A tall and burly warrior sat on its back. The armor on his body seemed to be the same color as the diamond dragon's scales. In each of his hands, he held a long-handled war hammer. Each hammer was 5 meters long, and the head of the hammer was as huge as a vat. These heavy weapons were supposed to be two-handed weapons, but this warrior actually used them as one-handed weapons. What would it feel like if you were to be hit by them? Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. This was the evaluation that Ji Dong had for this person. Even though he already had a powerful mount like the sacred evolution fire dragon, he could still feel the power of this knight. With a heavy heart, Ji Dong's expression turned ugly. Could it be that the Tumu Empire had sent more people to ambush the forest demons? Without a doubt, such a force of 3,000 people was not something that a merchant guild could possess. The Annihilation Legion before had already made Ji Dong very suspicious. This army of 3,000 people before him clearly looked more powerful than the Annihilation Legion. Where did they come from? Before Ji Dong could think about it carefully, the sacred evolution fire dragon beneath him had already lost its patience. Perhaps because it had discovered the existence of the diamond dragon. The short-tempered Mautai was the first to roar at the sky. That loud and explosive dragon roar was like rolling thunder, full of provocation as it broke through the air. This dragon roar caused the heavens and the earth to change color. The sunlight in the sky seemed to become even brighter. Ji Dong could clearly feel that the warm sunlight had suddenly become scorching hot, and it was rapidly gathering on the body of the sacred evolution fire dragon beneath him. Ji Dong himself also felt the heat, and the ultimate yang fire magic in his body flourished. Mautai was provoking the other party. His arrogance was just like Ji Dong's in the bartending world. He was still full of disdain for the diamond dragon, as if he was questioning the other party. Are you even worthy of being called a dragon? Sensing Mautai's provocation, the diamond dragon suddenly raised its head and let out a deafening roar as well. However, compared to Mautai's roar, its roar seemed to be lacking something. It actually seemed a little timid, and Mautai's roar was followed by a reaction. The Class 4 earth-shattering dragons prostrated themselves on the ground, just like the lizard WYRM. Not only did they not have any intention to fight, but they even buried their heads in the ground like ostriches. Mautai, good job. No matter how strong the enemy was, Ji Dong would not allow the Forest Demon tribe to suffer any more damage. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's figure flashed, and it had already sped up in the air, heading straight for the 3,000 enemies. A large number of earth-shattering dragons suddenly prostrated themselves on the ground, startling the burly man in diamond armor. He raised his head to look at the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon in the sky and shouted. The diamond dragon spread its wings and soared into the sky, heading straight for Ji Dong. Compared to the cowardly emerald lizard WYRM King, this Class 9 diamond dragon was clearly much stronger. However, its aura seemed to be suppressed by the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. The 5 Lianya did not roar angrily like Mautai, but its gaze was extremely cold. Faint black flames were silently released, as if it was preparing for something. Very soon, the diamond dragon had already soared into the sky. The burly man slammed the hammers in his hands, causing a loud bang. His aura surged, and he looked at Ji Dong from afar and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you chase after the forest demons? I'm here today, and I'll definitely make you suffer." After hearing her words, Ji Dong couldn't help but feel a little amused. Wasn't this the same as the villain complaining first? However, the other party's words also made him a little suspicious, and he asked in a low voice, "And who are you? Who told you that I'm chasing after the forest demons?" As he spoke, the dense extreme yang fire on Ji Dong's body had already risen. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. In the past, he didn't have the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, but now that he had this huge mount, he immediately realized the necessity of weapons for magicians with 6 crowns and above. Without a long weapon, it was really difficult to use their skills. Chapter 227. If one didn't have a suitable weapon, it wouldn't be easy to fight while riding a magical beast. After all, long-range magical techniques consumed a lot more mana than direct attacks. If the two sides were evenly matched, one would definitely be at a disadvantage. Ji Dong secretly decided that if he had the chance, he would definitely get a good long weapon for when he rode the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. Mautai roared again, and the white half of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's body suddenly became crystal clear. Then, black and white light blossomed at the same time, and a strong supreme ultimate devilish domain burst out from the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's body. They seemed to be even more battle-hungry than Ji Dong. Facing the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, the originally powerful diamond dragon suddenly became a little listless. It spread its wings and floated in the air, unwilling to advance. The huge man knocked the diamond dragon's head with his hammer. "Idiot, what are you afraid of? What's there to be afraid of? Isn't it just one more head, a few more claws, and one more element? Do you have to be so scared? This is too shameful, really too shameful." Woo-woo. The diamond dragon let out a cry, as if it was saying something. The huge man looked up at Hyoheim and said, "Kid, what kind of magical beast is this? How come I've never seen it before? Yeah, dual fire elemental suppression. What a strange magical beast. Dual fire elemental, right? Hey, are you called Ji-Dong? Ji-Dong was taken aback. How do you know my name? Are you really Ji-Dong? The huge man asked. Ji-Dong nodded and said, a real man never changes his name and never changes his surname. I am indeed Ji-Dong. Wait a minute. As he spoke, the huge man turned around, and the diamond dragon turned around and flew downwards. Because of the supreme ultimate devilish domain's influence, its flying speed was obviously slower than when it came. Ji-Dong watched in bewilderment as the diamond dragon flew back to the ground. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure among the 3,000 warriors. This wasn't because Ji-Dong had good eyesight, but because the figure was just too obvious. Among the group of earth-shattering dragons, a fiery red, flaming, wild lion crawled out. Yes, crawled. Under the powerful pressure of the sacred evolution fire dragon, the flaming wild lion was inevitably suppressed. It didn't even dare to stand up and could only crawl out. The person sitting on the back of the flaming wild lion was someone Ji-Dong recognized. It was Huang Liming, the chief of the Central Plains Imperial Guard whom he had defeated and detained. Seeing Huang Liming appear, Ji-Dong immediately understood something. When the diamond dragon landed, the huge man said a few words to Huang Liming, then pointed at Ji-Dong in the air. The two exchanged a few words, and the diamond dragon soared into the sky again, arriving in front of Ji-Dong. This time, the huge man didn't brandish his sledgehammers. Instead, he hung the sledgehammers on both sides of the diamond dragon and cupped his fists. Hyoheim bowed and said, the Prince of Equality's subordinate, commander of the Diamond Corps, Wolf Fong, greets the young lord. Sure enough, it was just as he had guessed. Ji-Dong relaxed. You're a subordinate of the Prince of Equality? There's so many of you. How did you come to the Easternwood Empire? The huge man laughed and took off his helmet, revealing his beard. His rough face was full of admiration as he said, Your Highness didn't tell me that you had such a powerful magical beast as a mount. Although our Diamond Corps belongs to the Central Empire, we only listen to Your Highness' orders. Your Highness knows that you're going to lead the Forest Demon tribe to migrate, so he specially sent us to receive you. As for how we got here, you'll know when you go down and take a look. There's no place in the Radiance continent that our Diamond Corps can't go. All right, I'll go down and take a look with you. Ji-Dong waved his right hand, and a golden light blossomed in the air, forming a symbol. This was him telling Elder Tom to let the forest demons rest here and wait for his news. The Diamond Dragon was in front, and the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon was at the back. He retracted the Tai Chi demonic domain and flew down. Before landing, Wolfong already gave a loud yell and said, Brothers, open up a path. Let young lords see how he came. Immediately, the 3,000 Diamond Corps soldiers quickly separated. As Mount Ai retracted its pressure, the earth-cracking dragons were finally able to get up. However, none of them dared to look at Mount Ai or 5 Grains Liquor. The 3,000 Diamond Corps soldiers separated, and Ji-Dong immediately understood why they could suddenly appear in front of him without a sound. Behind the 3,000 Diamond Corps was a slope that extended downwards, all the way to the ground. Thinking of the earth-cracking dragon's special ability to travel underground, Ji-Dong finally understood that the Diamond Corps had actually dug their way here. Huang Liming jumped down from the back of the flaming lion and walked to Ji-Dong in a few steps. He bowed and said, Huang Liming, subordinate of the Prince of Equality, greets the young lord. I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've become even more heroic. Ji-Dong waved his hand and said, No need to be so polite. What are you all doing here? Huang Liming said, Great Commander Wolf, Fong has never seen you before. His Highness is afraid that there will be a misunderstanding, so he specially sent me to accompany him. After all, the Forest Demon Tribe has hundreds of thousands of people. I'm afraid that there will be trouble if we pass through the border between the two countries. His Highness has ordered the Diamond Corps to open up an underground passage. This way, there will be no problem passing through the border. Once we enter the territory of our Central Empire, these forest demons will be truly safe. All the internal checkpoints have received His Highness's order, and are prepared with supplies, waiting for young Lord to lead the forest demon army in. This grandfather of his was really thoughtful. This would save him a lot of trouble. Jidong was delighted and couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face. He jumped down from the sacred flame dragon's back and said, "Then I'll have to trouble the two generals." Wolfang laughed and said, "It's no trouble at all. It's been a long time since I came out to relax. Young Lord, when do you think we should set off? The underground passage from here to our country's border has already been opened. It can accommodate 100 people walking side by side." Jidong thought for a moment and said, "There's no time to lose. Let's set off right away and enter the Central Empire's territory to avoid unnecessary trouble." Wolfang laughed mischievously and said, "I actually want to encounter some trouble. My brothers haven't exercised for a long time. Even if the extermination corps of the Easternwood Empire comes, it's nothing. Young Lord, you still don't know, but our Diamond Corps is known as the continent's #1 corps. It's made up of 10,000 people. 5,000 of them are stationed at the entrance of the Evil Saint Passage, led by my big brother Songrillo. As for the remaining 5,000, I brought 3,000 this time. Even if the entire extermination corps comes, it won't be a problem." Jidong's heart stirred, and he said, "General Wolfang, the extermination corps you're talking about is a group of cyan-armored warriors riding lizard dragons, and there are also devil masters among them?" Wolfang nodded and said, "That's them. They're the trump card corps of the Easternwood Empire. They have a total of 5,000 people, and their combat strength is not bad." Hearing Wolfang's words, Jidong's eyes couldn't help but flash a cold light. Good. Easternwood Empire, they actually sent their trump card corps to deal with the Sun's Sun tribe. Prince Tianlu, you're really capable. Wolf looked at the sacred evolution fire dragon with some envy and said, "Young master, this mount of yours is really godly. In the past, my diamond dragon has never been afraid of anyone. With your mount around, our diamond army's combat power will be reduced by at least half." "What's its name?" Jidong said, "It's called the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon." "General Wolfang, I'll go greet the forest demons, then we'll set off." With the support of the Diamond Corps, the following matters were much easier to handle. The tunnel opened by the earth-shattering dragon was very wide. Even though the forest demons had 200,000 people, they didn't expend much effort to pass through. Wolfang looked very boorish, but he was very meticulous. He sent 1,000 Diamond Corps warriors to open the path in front, while he personally led the remaining 2,000 Diamond Corps warriors and Jidong to cover the rear. Only after all the forest demons had entered the tunnel did he enter the tunnel with Jidong. After 2 days of traveling in complete darkness, the party finally entered the territory of the Central Plains Empire. The Central Plains Empire had already prepared all kinds of supplies, so the exhausted forest demons rested for 2 days before continuing on their journey. With the Diamond Corps, the journey was smooth and unimpeded, and they arrived at the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. Wolfang and Huang Liming led the Diamond Corps to escort Jidong and the forest demons to the outer ring of the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. Only then did Hyoheim bid farewell and return to report. Before leaving, Wolfang also told Jidong that if there was anything wrong with the magical beasts in the Earth Spirit Mountain Range, he should ask Jidong to return to the Central Plains City to deploy troops, and he would personally lead the Diamond Corps to flatten this place. Jidong entered the mountain range alone and arrived at the Vermilion Bird's cave abode. He had to make all the necessary preparations before allowing the forest demons to enter the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. Everything in the Vermilion Bird's cave abode remained the same. Aunt Vermilion Bird. Seeing the Vermilion Bird, Jidong couldn't help but feel a myriad of emotions welling up in his heart. Hua's heavy injuries filled his heart with shame. Just as he was about to confess to the Vermilion Bird, a red light lit up beside Jidong. Amidst the cheerful cries of a phoenix, a golden-red figure had already flown in front of the Vermilion Bird like a swallow. She spread her wings, and the cries of a phoenix could be heard. Ahur! This golden-red figure was the cheerful and lively Hur. The Vermilion Bird was naturally overjoyed to see her daughter again not long after. She didn't notice the change in Jidong's expression. While Hor was affectionate with her mother, she would occasionally look back at the vermilion bird. Hyoheim stuck out her cute little tongue. The forest demons finally had a new home. Within 3 days, more than 200,000 forest demons had moved into the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. Each tribe had found a suitable place to camp in. As for how to improve the environment of the Earth Spirit Mountain Range, the forest demons had the authority. The vermilion bird had personally given the order that if any magical beast dared to attack the forest demon tribe, they would immediately be annihilated. As for the forest demons that could improve the environment of the Earth Spirit Mountain Range, most of the magical beasts were extremely welcoming. The forest demons and magical beasts depended on each other, and there was no doubt that it would be a great guarantee for their survival. The wind was gentle, and the clouds were light. The sun hung high in the sky, and the warm weather gave people a comfortable feeling. High up on a mountain peak, with Tom as the leader, all the forest demon elders had arrived. They stood together. On the mountain peak, there was a new grave. Ji Dong silently stood in front of the new grave and bowed to it 3 times. A row of large words was carved on the grave. Grave of the forest demon great elder Odom's mother. Elder Odom, I have fulfilled my promise to you. The forest demon tribe has settled down in the Earth Spirit Mountain Range. Here, your tribe will definitely be able to survive. You don't need to worry about their safety anymore. Tears flickered in the eyes of every forest demon elder. Tom looked at the grave and walked to Ji Dong's side. He choked with sobs and said, Great elder, you can rest assured. Under the leadership of our great king, we have a new home. I will definitely inherit your will. No matter how difficult it is, I will not let our tribe suffer anymore. After a moment of silence, Tom turned to Hyoheim and said, Great king, if great elder Odom's spirit in heaven sees that we have settled down here, he will definitely be smiling in the underworld. Although the life energy in the Earth Spirit Mountain Range cannot be compared to the Forest of Life, we will definitely make this place as beautiful as the Forest of Life. It was you who gave the forest demon tribe a new life. You will always be our king. No matter what you need us to do in the future, the forest demon tribe will never refuse. Another elder walked over with a tray. On the tray, there were 10 green gourds of the same size. Tom said, Great king, you must have a lot of things to do. This place will always be your home. If you have time, please come back to see your people. These 10 bottles of Source of Life are the best that we have brewed. They are 3 times more effective than ordinary Source of Life. They are made from the sap of ancient trees that are at least 100 years old. I believe that they will be of some use to you. Ji Dong did not decline. He stored the 10 bottles of Source of Life into his vermilion bird bracelet. Tom took out a green leaf from his bosom and handed it to Ji Dong. The leaf was transparent like a piece of jade, and it had an emerald luster. The immense life energy it exuded was even denser than the Source of Life. This is the token of the forest demon tribe. It is called the Core of Life. Great king, if you carry it with you, it will have the effect of prolonging your life. If you're injured, you only need to place it on your wound, and it will help you heal quickly. If you need anything in the future, if it is not convenient for you to come back, as long as your messenger carries this Core of Life, we will do it for you. Ji Dong frowned and said, Elder Tom, I will accept the Source of Life. However, this Core of Life is too precious. I cannot accept it. Tom said anxiously, Great king, if it was not for you, the forest demon tribe would no longer exist. What would this Core of Life amount to? No matter what, you must accept it. Otherwise, we will kneel here. As he said that, he was the first to kneel. The group of forest demon elders followed suit and knelt down. They looked at Ji Dong with determined eyes. Ji Dong sighed when he saw the determination in their eyes. In the end, he took the Core of Life. There was a green thread on the Core of Life. Ji Dong hung it on his neck. Chapter 228. The leaf of the Core of Life stuck to his chest. Instantly, a large amount of life energy flowed into his body. Ji Dong felt as if every cell in his body had been activated. It was an indescribably comfortable feeling. He helped Elder Tom up and said from the bottom of his heart, Elders, please get up. In the future, I hope that you will not call me king anymore. I cannot accept such a title. I only did what I could to ease my conscience. I am more willing to be a friend of the forest demon tribe, an eternal friend. Jidong did not linger in the Earth Spirit Mountain range. He only temporarily left Flame by the Vermilion Bird's side, while he and Ajin returned to the Earth Spirit Lake. The battle that he had promised to help the Wizard Guild would take place in half a month. During this time, he wanted to cultivate again. First, he wanted to make a batch of magic wine, which would help him research how to create more powerful skills. Second, he wanted to successfully cultivate the divine art fusion. As the saying goes, it is never a burden to have more skills. After the battle with the Annihilation Army, Jidong understood that although his current strength was not bad, there was still a large gap between him and a true powerhouse. Whether it was to better protect the Flaming Bar or to prepare for the battle of the holy and evil that would take place in less than a year, he had to improve his strength. Earth Spirit Lake. Flaming Bar stood in the center of the Earth's core rock. She silently looked at Jidong, who had entered a state of cultivation. She looked at him calmly. To her, this was not loneliness at all. She could feel that after helping the forest demons migrate, Jidong seemed to have matured a little. He had become more reserved. But no matter how much his strength had changed, whenever he looked at her, his gaze would always be so gentle. Flaming Bar had always been thinking about a question. Could she really accept Jidong's feelings? Although she had already opened up a lot in her heart, there was still a final obstacle in her heart. It was not because of her identity, nor was it because of her strength. It was because she was afraid that one day, if she left Jidong, what would he do? After being together for 10 years, she knew Jidong too well. If she and Jidong were really together, he would definitely not be able to bear it if she left. Looking at Jidong, Flaming Bar's gaze became more and more gentle. Jidong, Jidong, do you know that after knowing you, I really have human emotions? To me, this is undoubtedly a wonderful thing, but I am afraid that I will hurt you. The more important you are in my heart, the more I am afraid that you will be hurt in the future. After all, if it were not for the two sovereigns who disturbed the core world, I would not have existed. Of the world, if they discovered my existence, they would... Thinking of this, Flaming Bar suddenly felt a wave of panic. She was shocked to realize that she was not afraid of death, but of leaving Jidong. She could not watch him cultivate, taste the fine wine he made, and accompany him on his travels in the human world. Complicated and contradictory emotions kept flickering in Flaming Bar's eyes. Ajin sat on the other side of the core rock and was also cultivating. This world, full of fire elements, was the most unsuitable enemy for her to cultivate, but Flaming Bar forcefully isolated the fire elements from Ajin's body. Just like when she was protecting Jidong, Ajin had already drunk a bottle of supreme grade source of life that the forest demons had given to Jidong. It was healing her internal organs that had been sealed in ice for many years. With the help of this supreme grade source of life, she could be considered to have truly come back to life. She no longer needed to worry. Half a month later, come out, Jidong shouted. Red light flowed on his wrist, and the Vermilion Bird bracelet strangely appeared under his skin. Jidong's eyes shone with excitement. He took a deep breath and shouted again. Junimo Yin-Yang armor, come out. This time, a golden red light enveloped his entire body. The mask, the pauldrons, the breastplate. Every part of the Junimo Yin-Yang armor appeared one by one. Although the process was still a little slow, the sight of the armor emerging from his body was still amazing. Not far away, Ajin was silently cultivating like Jidong. Although the fusion divine art was not as useful to her as Jidong's, it could also be used as a way to train her mental strength. How do you feel? Flaming Bar smiled and asked Hyoheim. Jidong nodded and said, it seems to be a little faster today. When will I be able to release the Junimo Yin-Yang armor in an instant? My fusion divine art will be practiced to perfection, and it's not bad now. I can feel the subtle changes in my body after being affected by the soul fire. This feeling is very strange, but also very wonderful. It's like a seed that has taken root and germinated under the infiltration of my soul fire. It's constantly growing. Flaming Bar said, for you, this fusion divine art is as valuable as the God Destroyer strike. You need to practice more. The core of life is also a good thing. It's perfect as a host for Moutai and Wuliangya. Your soul fire is burning in your chest, so they will be affected and evolve faster. Moreover, the huge life force in the core of life can also make up for the sacred evolution fire dragon's shortcomings due to its mutation. A few days ago, with the help of Flaming Bar, the core of life was transformed into a storage magic tool. The space inside wasn't big, but it was more than enough to accommodate the sacred evolution fire dragon. Jidong then used the fusion divine art to integrate the core of life into his body. Not only could he absorb the huge life force in the core of life, but the sacred evolution fire dragon would also benefit greatly. After half a month of practice, Jidong's mana had improved a little. He was getting closer and closer to level 62. Of course, this had a lot to do with the stimulation of his potential in the consecutive battles. After obtaining the soul fire, Jidong's potential seemed to have become infinitely greater. Jidong, after you helped the Magician Guild in the battle, let's go to the North Water Empire. Flaming Bar suddenly said. Jidong was startled and said, North Water Empire? You want to go there? Flaming Bar smiled faintly, as if recalling something. There was something in his eyes, and he said, Do you know when I started to have a different feeling for you? Jidong shook his head, but he stared at the Flaming Bar with great interest. Flaming Bar smiled and said, It was that time when you Bissot and Carr set up a table in front of the Bartenders Guild and challenged the entire Bartenders Guild branch in Central Plain City. At that time, you exuded an indescribable temperament, arrogance, confidence, and insufferably arrogant. Although you are becoming more and more important in the world of magicians, you only show your true self when you are mixing drinks. I like watching you mix drinks the most, and I like watching you compete with others even more. Jidong stared at the Flaming Bar in bewilderment and said, You want me to go to the North Water Empire's Bartenders Guild headquarters and challenge them? The smile on the Flaming Bar's perfect face became even wider, and he said, Why not? In my heart, my Jidong is the best bartender, the real god of wine. I want to see you defeat the people from the Bartenders Guild. Jidong also smiled and said, All right, as long as you are willing, we will immediately go to the Northwater Empire's headquarters after we finish our business here. Who knows, we might even win some good drinks from there. Actually, other than you, I really don't want to let others drink the drinks I mix. I only mix drinks for people who understand me and I admire. The Flaming Bar pursed her red lips and said, I want to drink the drinks you mix now. Jidong was stunned for a moment and said, Didn't I already drink it just now? The Flaming Bar actually revealed a cute and naive attitude that only human girls would have. She said, Can I have another drink? I want to drink the Flaming Bar's burning passion. Oh, right, you need to mix too. Ajin, come and try the drinks that Jidong makes. Consider it his apology to you. Ajin and Jidong looked at each other. Their originally calm faces instantly turned red, as if they had been dyed red by the magma in the geocentric lake. Ever since she had intimate contact with Jidong, she had been trying her best to avoid recalling the scene at that time. She had also warned Jidong to keep it a secret. However, it was obvious that the Flaming Bar knew what had happened at that time very well. There was even a hint of slyness in the smile that she was looking at her now. Master, Ajin wanted to say something, but she really couldn't say it. She glared at Jidong with hatred and lowered her head. Jidong, on the other hand, had an awkward expression. He lowered his head and didn't know what to do. The Flaming Bar walked to Ajin's side, held her hand, and said, What happened that day was all Jidong's fault. It has nothing to do with you. It's only right for him to apologize to you. If you still won't forgive him, I'll apologize to you on his behalf again. No, there's no need. Ajin quickly shook her head. She raised her head and glared at Jidong. She didn't know why, but her plump and perky but twisted unnaturally. The more she tried to avoid it, the deeper the memory of that day became in her mind. In order to avoid the awkwardness, Jidong quickly took out his own shaker and condiments. He raised his head and glanced at the Flaming Bar. His gaze instantly became a little blurred. Deep affection was ignited in his eyes. Only then did he look at the shaker in his hand again. The flaming bar held Ah Jin's hand and looked at Ji Dong with a burning gaze. Every time Ji Dong mixed a drink for her, the look he gave her would make her heart tremble slightly unconsciously. After thinking for a while, Ji Dong said, "Because there's no tomato juice or lemon juice, I'll use orange paca and lemon paca instead. The color of this flaming bar's flaming passion will change from red to gold. The taste will be stronger, and the alcohol will be stronger." As he spoke, Ji Dong took the condiments to a protruding table on the platform of the Earth's core rock. He placed the condiments on the table. At this moment, the flaming bar had specially made a table of Earth's core rock for him. Two balls of strong golden flames lit up on Ji Dong's hands at the same time. He couldn't wash his hands with clean water in the Earth's core lake, but his habit of cleaning his hands wouldn't change because of this. If he couldn't wash his hands, he would use the extreme yang fire to remove all the dirt. The effect would be better. Looking at Ji Dong's serious expression, the embarrassed Ah Jin's gaze gradually calmed down. These days, she had always seen Ji Dong mix drinks for the flaming bar, and only for the flaming bar. Although she had never drunk it before, the strong aroma of the wine would always attract her. Especially when she saw Ji Dong's elegance, calmness, and deep affection when he looked at the flaming bar, Ah Jin couldn't help but feel a bit of envy in her heart. 3/10 of pure Vipolo wine, 6/10 of orange-flavored vodka, 1/10 of lemon vodka, and the last 10th of Ji Dong's special seasoning consisting of Worcester sauce, Tabasco horseradish oil, salt, and clam powder. The moment the lid was closed, the shaker had already jumped into his palm. With a light flick, the shaker was already spinning at a high speed. Ever since he mastered the soaring serpent transformation with the help of the flying serpent, Ji Dong's flexibility had already reached an inhuman level. With a flick of his wrist, almost instantly, a ball of silver light appeared in his palm. It was as bright as the sun. Immediately after, his entire body began to sway like an illusion. His feet clearly did not leave the ground, but he gave off the feeling that there were 1,000 arms dancing around him. His movements were graceful and graceful. Although his speed was extremely fast, he did not seem hurried at all. Instead, his movements were orderly and unhurried. That silver sun circled around Ji Dong's body, continuously rising and falling. When he used his speed to the extreme, the flaming bar and Ah Jin clearly could not see his arms move again. 9 silver suns appeared around Ji Dong's body at the same time. Immediately after, 9 rays of silver light appeared at the same time, and the 9 balls of silver suns were instantly extinguished. As Ji Dong's body turned, the shaker had already appeared in his palm steadily. Only the golden liquor inside was jumping happily. Shooting 9 suns was one of Ji Dong's strongest bartending techniques in his previous life. At this moment, he was using it so calmly and effortlessly. This was the advantage of his body. If it was in his previous life, he would at least be drenched in sweat at this moment. But now even his breathing was so even. 2 glasses of golden liquor were poured out. Immediately, the rich aroma of the liquor filled the air. Ji Dong elegantly handed the glasses to the flaming bar and Ah Jin. The flaming bar took a sip of the fine liquor and nodded with a smile a Hyoheim. Ah Jin also imitated the flaming bar and took a sip. Suddenly, her entire body stiffened involuntarily. She stared at Ji Dong with a burning gaze, as if there were ripples in her pupils. The flaming bar looked at Ah Jin meaningfully and slowly savored this glass of flaming bar's burning passion. Ji Dong's gaze was focused on the flaming bar and did not notice the change in Ah Jin's gaze. He had also forgotten that these 2 glasses of liquor were completely immersed in his feelings for the flaming bar. The flaming bar's burning passion was already very strong, and it was filled with his fiery and intense love. The flaming bar was already used to drinking this kind of liquor. Her heart was gradually conquered by this kind of liquor with special emotions. But as for Ah Jin, it was her first time drinking this kind of liquor. Chapter 229. After taking the first sip of the flaming bar's flaming passion, Ah Jin only felt a wave of scorching heat spreading from her mouth to every corner of her body. The intense heat seemed to burn her soul. The coldness in her personality was swept away in an instant. Then, That strange emotion spread to every corner of Ajin's body, along with the scorching liquor. Her eyes gradually became blurry. She seemed to feel that something was conquering her heart. She had never felt this kind of feeling before, and she couldn't tell what kind of feeling it was. It was as if she was possessed. Unknowingly, the cup of raging flames of burning emotions had already been gradually drunk. Her face had already become bright red, and within her heart, a thick heat was constantly beating. Every beat would cause her breathing to become a little hurried. Flaming Bar's Hyoheim said, "Continue practicing your divine art of fusion. It's almost time. We'll set off for Central Plains City tomorrow." Ji Dong didn't suspect anything. He nodded and walked to the side to continue practicing. Flaming Bar pulled Ajin's hand to the other side. Ajin was still immersed in the shock of the Flaming Bar's flaming passion. She didn't seem to notice anything that was happening in the outside world. Looking at her, Flaming Bar sighed his heart. Ajin, the emotion in Ji Dong's wine is something that even I can't resist, let alone you. I'm sorry, I didn't want to do this. But I'm afraid that one day, when I have to leave him, he won't be able to bear it. At that time, I hope that you can replace me and accompany him. You, who have lost your memory, are as white as paper. With you accompanying him, I can be at ease. Even though I hope that day will never come, I have to prepare for a rainy day. I'm sorry, Ajin. Take this as a reward for saving your life. Perhaps I'm too selfish, but for him, I'd rather be selfish for once. I'll also make it up to you in other aspects. Central Plains City was bustling as usual. Today's weather was exceptionally good. However, the atmosphere in the headquarters of the Magician Guild, located in the Wutu Avenue, was unusually heavy. Tomorrow was the day when the Magic Guild would challenge the Magic Skills Guild. To the Magic Guild, this was undoubtedly a battle of life and death. If they lost, it would mean that the Magic Guild would cease to exist. If they won, it wouldn't mean that they would be able to annex the Magic Skills Guild. After all, the Magic Skills Guild had a supreme being in charge. What did the Magic Guild have to annex them? The Magician Guild's vice president, Hilo, was pacing back and forth in his office. Currently, he was a little restless. The arrangements for the decisive battle were almost complete. Only one person had yet to arrive. This person was also the key. With his presence, the battle tomorrow was almost assured. With him, of the battle of the magician skills. Magic Guild had Magic Guild. In Hilo, the Magic Skill Guild, Skills, Dragon, Gene, and of Skills, Magic, and Gene, and Magic, had did of Sun, Gene God, Gene was, Gene of Magic, Passion, Master Gene of Gene Skills, Gene of, how many people? Who are you? Hilo frowned slightly. He was already in a bad mood, and being disturbed made him even worse. One man and two women. They are all very young. The two women are wearing bamboo hats that cover their faces. I can't see their faces. The man seems to have been here a month ago. He even passed the 4-star exam. Shi Luo's eyes lit up when he heard the words 4-star qualification. Is he here? Please, oh no, I'll go take a look myself. Under the surprised gaze of the staff, Hilo couldn't wait to rush out of the office and walked quickly. The smile on his face was full of excitement. He must have come. Haha, the heavens are helping my Magician Guild. The staff member who came to report the news had never seen Vice President Hilo so impatient. He even ran out of the office. He couldn't help but wonder why the Vice President was so excited about a mere 4-star magic caster. Hilo soon arrived at the hall on the first floor of the Magician Guild. As soon as he entered the hall, his gaze landed on a young man in the middle of the hall, as if there was a magnet. His simple clothes couldn't hide his proud and unique temperament. He wasn't very handsome, but just by standing there, he gave people a feeling of a crane in a flock of chickens. Especially by his side, there were two women who, although they covered their faces with bamboo hats and veils, looked perfect from the looks of it. Hilo's appearance undoubtedly attracted the attention of the magicians who were handling various affairs in the hall. Some of the veteran magicians naturally knew this vice president. The higher-ranked ones greeted Hilo humbly. However, Hilo didn't seem to see them. He strode forward and arrived in front of the young man. "You're finally here." The relief and relaxation on Hilo's face couldn't be concealed. The excitement in his eyes was as if he had seen what he longed for the most. This man and woman. The woman was none other than Ji-dong, Flaming Bar, and Ah-jin. After more than half a month of seclusion, Ji-dong once again came to the Central Plains city one day before the Guild War. "I shouldn't be late, right?" Ji-dong smiled slightly. He also felt a little strange. He was only a 6-crown magician. Even if he had the ultimate dual fire magic, this vice president, who was obviously an 8-crown magician, shouldn't be so enthusiastic. It was as if he could decide the outcome of tomorrow's battle. One had to know that the Magic Skills Guild agreed to determine the outcome of the battle in 10 battles. Even if he could win one battle, he couldn't change the overall situation. Hilo hurriedly said, "Not late, not late. You're just in time. As long as you're here, it's good. Please, let's talk inside." As he spoke, the dignified vice president actually played the role of a guide. He led Ji-dong, Flaming Bar, and Ah-jin into the Magician Guild headquarters and went straight to the 3rd floor. The other magicians watched Hilo personally lead Ji-dong and the other 2 into the guild and couldn't help but whisper to each other, "Who is this young man today? Do any of you know? Why did Vice President Hilo personally come out to welcome him? Could it be that this is a veteran powerhouse, and because he cultivated to the extreme, his appearance became younger? I don't think so. Only a supreme powerhouse can restore his appearance to youth. This young man doesn't look like a supreme powerhouse. Definitely not. I've seen this person before. He came to the guild about a month ago and even passed the 4-star assessment. It's really strange. Why would a 4-star magician be welcomed by the vice president personally?" Naturally, Ji-dong couldn't hear the discussion outside. He had already arrived in Hilo's office once again. "Please take a seat. I'll get someone to make tea." The excitement on Hilo's face hadn't diminished until now. Looking at Ji-dong, he beamed with joy. The burden in his heart had finally been lifted. Ji-dong said, "Vice President Hilo, you don't have to be busy. I came a day earlier to ask about the guild's arrangements for tomorrow's battle. I'll definitely be there on time." Hilo said, "Everything has been arranged. According to our agreement with the Magic Skills Guild, tomorrow morning at the Azure Plains, 100 miles north of the Central Plains, we will have a decisive battle with the Magic Skills Guild." Speaking up to here, he let out a small sigh before continuing, "The Magicians Guild has a history of over 1,000 years. The Magic Arts Guild was founded 300 years later than us, but they still want to swallow an elephant. The future of the Magicians Guild will be decided in tomorrow's battle. If we can obtain victory and merge with the Magic Arts Guild, then we will become the strongest guild in the continent. In tomorrow's battle, as long as you represent the Magicians Guild in battle, regardless of victory or defeat, we will award you the highest 9-star medal. At the same time, you will be appointed as an elder of the guild. Of course, the elders can choose not to do anything for the guild. Every month, the guild will give you 10,000 gold coins as a sign of respect." Ji-dong couldn't help but laugh. "There's such a good thing? But that's only if the Magicians Guild wins as a whole. If we're swallowed by the Magic Skills Guild, then all of this will be meaningless." Hilo nodded solemnly and said, "That's right. Mr. Ji-dong, how about this? You can stay at the Magicians Guild today. We have a special place to receive VIPs. Tomorrow morning, we'll set off together." Ji-dong thought for a moment and nodded. "All right, but you have to give me a big room, enough for 3 people." Hilo was stunned for a moment and looked at the 2 girls beside Ji-dong. His lips moved and a faint voice entered Ji-dong's ears. "Young man, you have to control yourself. It's better not to waste too much energy before tomorrow's battle." Hearing this, Ji-dong knew that this vice president had misunderstood and was speechless. He turned his head to look at the flaming bar and felt a pain in his waist. The flaming bar had secretly pinched him. Hilo's forced voice into a line showed his strong control over mana. But even if he could hide it from Ah-jin, how could he hide it from the flaming bar? "You don't have to worry about that. Then please arrange a place for us to stay." Ji-dong couldn't be bothered to explain more. Instead, he felt a little satisfied and secretly wondered if he could sleep on the same bed with the flaming bar like last time. But the possibility wasn't too high. At this moment, the flaming bar suddenly said, "Mr. Vice President, if I remember correctly, you promised Ji Dong last time that if he can help Magician Guild win this time, you can let him choose anything from the Magician Guild's treasure vault, right?" Hilo immediately nodded and said, "Of course. Even if we lose the competition, the guild will definitely honor this promise." Listening to the flaming bar's voice, his heart was filled with shock. As the vice president of the Magician Guild, when he was young, Hilo was also an outstanding talent of his generation. He had naturally had many women and seen countless beauties, but he had never heard such a beautiful voice. That voice was crisp, mellow, soft, and long. Listening to her speak, it was as if the 36 million pores on his body would open up. It was indescribably comfortable. It was a complete enjoyment on the soul. The flaming bar said, "In that case, how about fulfilling this reward in advance? Ji Dong still lacks a weapon. With a weapon, he can fight better for the Magician Guild tomorrow." Ji Dong looked at the flaming bar strangely. It was true that he lacked a weapon, but he didn't expect the flaming bar to mention it at this time. Hilo nodded almost without thinking. The Magician Guild was rich and overbearing. Moreover, Ji Dong's importance to tomorrow's battle could be said to be the absolute core. "No problem. I'll bring the three of you to choose now. There's no need to limit it to one. I can make the decision to gift Mr. Ji Dong a full set of magical weapon equipment, including a mount." Ji Dong frowned slightly. He couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. This vice president of the Magician Guild seemed to be a little too enthusiastic. "Thank you very much." The flaming bar nodded and agreed on behalf of Ji Dong without hesitation. Ji Dong naturally supported the flaming bar's decision without hesitation. Hilo stood up and said, "The three of you, please follow me." Saying that, he walked out of his office first. He didn't go back, but continued walking along the passage. Walking all the way to the end, Ji Dong saw a very familiar pattern at the end of this passage. The 10 totem reliefs formed a circle. This pattern was very similar to the entrance of the underground palace that he and Yao Qianshu found when they entered the Misty Swamp. There were even mana fluctuations of similar attributes on it. The current Ji Dong was no longer the rookie he used to be. His soul fire slightly moved, and he could already feel the huge mana fluctuations attached to the 10 totems. Compared to the underground palace, the mana fluctuations released by these totems were not the slightest bit weaker. "Please stand beside me." Hilo made an inviting gesture, and his expression became serious. Ji Dong and the other two stood beside Shi Luo. Shi Luo flipped his wrist, and without seeing what he did, a wave of magic surged out from his palm, and a strange round card appeared in his palm. The round plate itself was made of a silver metal. In the center was a white round jade the size of a fingernail. It was warm and firm, pure and pure, white and flawless like congealed fat. Around this round white jade was a circle of gems, and each gem was also round and slightly smaller than the white jade in the center. There were 10 gems in total, and they were respectively cyan, dark green, red, blue, yellow, gray, white, gold, black, and purple. Below each gem, there was a corresponding totem pattern that was exquisitely carved. As soon as the round plate was taken out, it immediately gave off a feeling of brilliance and splendor. Ji Dong's pupils contracted. The circle of gems around the round plate was nothing. Although it was a 5 elements divine stone, it was very small after all. However, the white jade in the middle was a priceless treasure. It was a small piece of heaven jade. Although it was not as big as the one he got last time, it looked more lustrous. Chapter 230. Hilo raised the round plate in his hand and pressed it against the center of the wall, creating a concave space cover. The size of the round plate just happened to match the concave space. A thick yellow light was released from Hilo's hand. The thick yellow light was filled with a pure feeling. It was solid, thick and solid, as if it was real. He pointed his index finger at the center of the jade of heaven. Immediately, the 10 gems on the round plate lit up at the same time. The jade of heaven itself also became more crystal clear, emitting a layer of chaotic aura that Ji Dong was very familiar with. As the round plate lit up, all the totem marks on the wall also lit up, especially the 5 elements divine stones inlaid in the eyes of each totem. They were even more dazzling. 10 colored halos were born at the same time, and the aura that was exactly the same as the 5 elements yin-yang world was released. With Hilo standing as the center, everything within a diameter of 3 meters was covered. With a flash of light, the 4 of them had already disappeared. The light on the wall returned to normal, and the depression that the round plate had pressed into seemed to have merged with liquid, covering the round plate. The illusory teleportation only lasted for a moment before returning to normal. Jidong only felt his eyes light up, and his surroundings suddenly became clear. He was surprised to find that he had come to a somewhat illusory world. Everything around him seemed to be a little hazy and unreal. The rich yin and yang aura of the 5 elements filled the surroundings, and there was no feeling of suffocation at all. The flaming bar said with some surprise, "Illusory reality, 5 elements, space." This time, it was Hilo's turn to be surprised. He looked at the flaming bar in surprise and said, "You know about the 5 elements, space?" The flaming bar said lightly, "It is extremely difficult to open up the 5 element space. It is like the space in the storage magic tool, but it is more stable. Not only can it allow living things to survive, but it is also almost eternal. As long as the continent exists, it will not disappear. Compared to the storage magic tool, it is unknown how much stronger it is. This 5 element space is very large, and it needs at least 10 9-crown demon masters to open up, and their attributes must be different." When Hilo heard the flaming bar's words, his eyes immediately revealed a look of admiration. When he first saw Jidong and the other 2, his attention was completely attracted by Jidong. But when he heard the flaming bar's voice, he found that among the 3 of them, the truly unfathomable one was this woman with fiery red wavy hair. Hilo also tried to probe the aura of the flaming bar, but he found that the flaming bar was as deep as a bottomless abyss. As soon as his spiritual wave came into contact with the flaming bar, it would immediately disappear inexplicably. He could not even feel anything, let alone probe. This was also why the dignified president of the Magic Guild used honorifics when talking to the flaming bar. "You are right. This is the 5 element space. It was jointly opened up by the first president of the Magic Guild and 9 elders to store the most precious items of the guild." At this point, Hilo could not help but reveal a look of nostalgia in his eyes. He said, "That was the true heyday of the guild. With the 10 supremes in charge, no small fry dared to offend them. Even the 5 great empires were in awe of the guild. If the guild was still as strong as it was then, how could it be provoked by the Magic Skills Guild?" Just as Hilo spoke, the voice of the flaming bar rang in the depths of Jidong's soul, explaining the mystery of the 5 elements space to him. "Jidong, this 5 element space is a very strange place. Even I can't create it. It must have all 10 elements, and it must have an extremely large amount of mana and skillful cooperation. It can only be achieved with the help of the 5 elements formation. In your human world, this space is probably unique. This space looks like an entity, but in reality, it is an illusory place that is supported by a large amount of mana. It can be said to be the safest place to store items. Nothing will rot here, and it will be rejuvenated after a long time. If you can cultivate here for a long time, it will be of great benefit to the magic masters. However, if you do that, the mana in the 5 element space will be absorbed by the magic masters. Once too many magic masters cultivate here, the 5 element space might collapse after a long time. I think the Magic Masters Guild will not be willing to let this happen. After all, to the current Magic Masters Guild, this 5 element space cannot be replicated. It is because I felt the existence of this space that I made you agree to participate in this confrontation between the 2 guilds." After listening to the flaming bar's explanation, Jidong immediately understood a lot. He looked around and saw that the place they appeared in was a long and narrow tunnel. Both sides of the tunnel were inlaid with fist-sized luminous pearls, illuminating the place as if it was daytime. The price of these luminous pearls alone was already immeasurable. "Vice President Hilo, show us something," Jidong said. Hilo said, "The 3 of you, please follow me. Under his lead, the four of them passed through the long and narrow passageway. After walking for about 100 meters, their surroundings suddenly widened. It was as if a fog had dispersed, and they appeared in a polygonal hall. At the top of the hall, there were a total of 12 luminous pearls revolving around the 12 huge five-element divine stones, shining brilliantly. The illusory halo of 10 elemental mana gave people a dazzling feeling. Although there were no decorations here, the luxurious atmosphere was much more enchanting than the Imperial Palace. On every wall of the polygon around the hall, there was a door. There were words on the door saying what kind of world it led to. The first thing that Ji Dong saw was a door with the annotation of defensive mana weapon. Looking around, there was also a series of doors, such as offensive mana weapon, long, offensive mana weapon, short, mana weapon full body armor, mana weapon light armor, mount equipment, crystal core storage, crystal crown storage, magic metal, and so on. All the treasures stored in the Magician's Guild were exposed. Seeing this, Ji Dong couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This was the real treasure. Although the treasure in the underground palace that he and Yao Qinshu found back then had the priceless 5 elements formation, in terms of actual value, it was really not as good as the Magician's Guild's treasure vault. No wonder the Magic Skill Guild coveted the Magician's Guild so much. 1,000 years of accumulation was really extraordinary. Although he hadn't seen the real thing, he could already see it from what he saw in front of him. Hilo smiled and said, "The president is not here. Now I am in charge of the treasure vault. The 3 of you can start choosing. What I can decide is that the 2 ladies can each choose an item, including Crystal Core and Crystal Crown below rank 9. As for Mr. Ji Dong, you can choose a whole set of equipment. Regardless of the outcome of tomorrow's battle, this is a reward from the guild and also a little support for your help. After all, you'll also become one of the elders of the guild in the future." Ji Dong glanced at the flaming bar. The reason why he agreed to Hilo's request was because of the flaming bar's guidance. The flaming bar naturally felt Ji Dong's intention. He nodded to Hilo and said, "In that case, we won't stand on ceremony. Let's choose a suitable long weapon for Ji Dong first." Hilo nodded straightforwardly and walked to the door that attacked the magic weapon, long. He released his mana again and pressed his right hand on the door. He moved in a special trajectory. His movements were so fast that even Ji Dong couldn't see it clearly. In just a moment, a strange symbol had already lit up on the door. This should be a special kind of door-opening array. If one wanted to enter the treasure vault of the 5-element space to choose a treasure, it wasn't something that the precious silver plate could do. The door that seemed to be completely solid actually became illusory after the appearance of this strange symbol. Hilo smiled slightly. Hyoheim made an inviting gesture to the 3 of them, and then stepped through the door. The first thing Ji Dong felt after stepping through the door was shock. That's right, shock. They entered a space that was more than 1,000 square meters. All the magical weapons that were more than 4 meters long were stored here, and they weren't hung on the walls like those magical weapon shops on the 2nd floor of the Mage Association. All the magical weapons here were actually floating in the air above 3 meters. And in this vast space that was more than 1,000 square meters in height, it was actually 100 meters high. The magic of the 5-element space was once again displayed in front of Ji Dong. However, what surprised Ji Dong was that the magical weapons floating in the air didn't emit any light at all. Every one of them was dull and only had the most basic metallic luster, not to mention emitting magical waves. He could only vaguely tell that they were extraordinary based on their materials and the gems inlaid on them. Hilo could see the doubt in Ji Dong's heart, and he explained, "Every magic weapon here has been carefully selected by the guild, and only the best can be stored in the 5-element space. Because each magic weapon contains a considerable amount of mana, and their attributes are mutually reinforcing, a large number of magic weapons coexist in the space. Once mana is triggered, it will easily cause damage to the space. Therefore, the magic weapons stored here are all sealed by the 5-element space. Only when they fall into someone's hands and are triggered by mana can they be restored to their original state. Whether or not you can choose a magic weapon depends on luck, and also depends on the selector's eyesight. Mr. Ji Dong, You can start choosing now. Jidong nodded. He himself had a certain understanding of the five elements magic array. Although he had been cultivating his soul fire in seclusion for the past 4 years and couldn't continue to comprehend the five elements magic array, his understanding and comprehension of mana had deepened with the ignition of his soul fire. He vaguely felt that he was about to comprehend the mystery of the fifth magic array. He was naturally very excited about the five-element space. Just feeling the aura here was extremely beneficial for him to comprehend the five elements magic array. Flaming bar. Which one do you think I should choose? Jidong asked the flaming bar from the depths of his soul. He naturally trusted the flaming bar's eyesight the most. Raging Flame looked at the ship and smiled. She shook her head and said, Jidong, the best weapons all have their own spirituality. No one can give you advice when choosing a weapon. It depends on fate, and under the guidance of fate, what you choose will be what it is. Only in this way can the weapon you choose produce the most perfect fit with you, just like how your soul is connected to the sacred fire dragon. Only under the harmony of water and milk can your strength truly go a step further. Although I can find the best magic weapon here for you, it may not be suitable for you. Even if it is a divine weapon, it must fall into the hands of someone who can truly display its profoundness. Only then can it be considered a true divine weapon. Do you understand? I understand. Jidong nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He walked toward the center of the hall, step by step. What surprised him was that Ajin actually walked out with him and took off her bamboo hat, revealing her almost perfect face. Hilo was shocked once again when he saw Ajin's appearance, but he was even more eager to see how perfect the flaming bar's temperament was. Unfortunately, the flaming bar didn't have any intention of going forward to choose at all. He just stood there and waited silently. Jidong only took a glance at Ajin before he was immersed in his own world. There were many types of long weapons in the air, as far as his eyes could see. There were battle axes, spears, long blades, long hammers, long axes, long swords, and so on. Every single one of them seemed to be of high quality. Jidong stood there for 5 minutes without moving. The long weapons filled his mind with all sorts of strange feelings. It was as if every weapon had a life of its own. Some were arrogant, some were fiery, some were heavy, some were violent, some were filled with cold, murderous intent, and some were filled with the demeanor of a king. Just as Hilo said, every magical weapon that could be displayed here could be said to be of high quality. Any of them could be sold at a sky-high price in an auction. How should he choose? Due to the seal of the five-element space, Jidong couldn't even sense the attributes of each magical weapon. That undoubtedly made it more difficult for him to choose a magical weapon that suited him. Use your heart to feel and your soul to comprehend. The soul fire will guide you. Whenever Jidong was lost, that perfect voice would always let him know that he didn't need to look back at the flaming bar. Jidong's heart immediately calmed down. At this moment, a golden light suddenly flashed beside him. Ajin had already leapt into the air. His body shot straight into the air, and this leap took him 7 meters into the air. Seeing that his momentum was about to end, a cold glint flashed in Ajin's eyes. He twisted his body in the air and actually sped up again just as he was about to stop, grabbing at the magic weapons floating at the top of the space. Chapter 231. Ajin leapt into the air and sped up again. Not only did she display the explosive strength and flexibility of her body, she also unleashed her ultimate metal mana without holding back. Immediately, at least 100 long-handled weapons in the mana weapon vault buzzed and glowed faintly with a golden luster. Without a doubt, these long-handled weapons all belonged to the metal element and were suitable for Ajin. However, Ajin didn't look at any of the weapons around her. Her eyes were fixed on a strange-looking weapon floating in the air. Seeing that she had already reached an altitude of almost 30 meters and could no longer go higher, she waved her right hand, and a golden chain extended from her arm. It flew into the air with a strong and brilliant golden light and the starlight of the metal element. It shot through the air towards the target that was 50 meters in the air. Hilo's pupils instantly contracted. As the vice chairman of the Wizard Guild, How could he not recognize this ultimate metal mana? He had never thought that the woman who had followed by Ji Dong's side and thought to be his woman would be such a hidden powerhouse. It seemed that the aura she released was not any weaker than Ji Dong's. Furthermore, when she leapt into the air and released her mana, even an 8-crown powerhouse like Hilo felt some pressure. It was a special kind of pressure formed by the combination of killing intent and ultimate metal. With a clanging sound, the golden chain wrapped itself around the weapon. Ajin let out a soft roar and exerted force with her body. The golden chain quickly retracted and fell to the ground with her body. After being pulled back by the golden chain, the 6-meter-long and 3-meter-wide weapon immediately lost its comfort in space. The powerful weight brought it crashing towards Ajin. Ajin didn't panic at all. The golden chains quickly retracted, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into demonic power and fused back into her body. She raised her right hand and firmly grasped the handle of the weapon. Immediately, the brilliant golden light flashed again. The Yin totem, Taiyin, silently appeared behind her. The totem, Taiyin, was similar to the black and white impermanence in the legends of Ji Dong's previous life. It flickered and flickered with a strange light. The brilliant golden light swarmed in, and the oddly shaped weapon seemed to have been ignited. The intense golden light soared into the sky, causing all the metal weapons in the space to buzz at the same time, as if they were celebrating that it had found its master. With the infusion of extreme metal magic power, the speed of the weapon's fall slowed down significantly. Ajin's body circled in the air, and a huge shield with a diameter of 5 meters appeared in her hands. This shield was not used for defense, but was raised high above her head. She used the pressure in the air to greatly slow down her fall. It was Ji Dong's first time seeing a metallic parachute. He had to admit that he was inferior to Ajin in terms of control of magic power. She landed firmly on the ground, and the golden shield turned back into mana and disappeared. Ajin also raised the strange weapon she had just obtained. Looking at this weapon, Ji Dong was stunned for a full 3 seconds. He had delayed the time he had to choose a magical weapon. He had always been very calm, but at this moment his expression became strange. This was because the magical weapon Ajin had chosen was too special and strange. It was not a knife, spear, claw, halberd, axe coin, hook, or fork. Instead, it was a huge pair of scissors. The scissors were 6 meters long, the handle was 3 meters wide, and the blade was 4 meters long. With a clanging sound, Ajin opened the scissors with force. Immediately, the golden light on the scissors blade flowed like water. It was cold, and the temperature in the space seemed to have dropped a lot. Scissors were usually used to cut clothes, but this scissors was filled with an extremely sharp, murderous aura. There was a faint layer of red light flowing on the sharp blades. It was not a mana wave, but a blood aura left behind by the creatures it had killed. How many people had it killed to leave such a mark on such a huge pair of scissors? The sharp, murderous aura on the golden scissors completely merged with Jin's own murderous aura, turning into an even colder aura. Under the infusion of Jin's extreme metal magic power, the 6-meter-long scissors released a golden light that was 3 meters long. It was like an extension of the scissors. Not to mention humans, even larger magical beasts would be cut in half by this scissors. Jin looked at Ji Dong coldly. Her gaze seemed to be lowered slightly, and Ji Dong subconsciously felt a chill run down his spine. His lower body seemed to tremble a few times. Remembering that he had bullied Jin before, Ji Dong's expression could not help but stiffen. Hilo looked at Jin, dumbfounded. He did not expect that Jin would choose such a magical weapon. At this moment, his expression had already turned a little ugly. Looking at the complicated golden mageweth on the handle of the golden scissors, the flowing light, and the cold blade, his heart was bleeding, and he was extremely regretful. Hilo originally thought that Ji Dong was the main choice, and in the special environment of the 5-element space, he might not be able to choose any treasures. As for the flaming bar in Ajin, he only said that he wanted a rope in Ji Dong, and he did not think too much about it. The flaming bar gave him an unfathomable feeling, and it was obviously the aura of a powerhouse. It was naturally not a problem to rope in such a powerhouse. As for Ajin, he did not pay much attention to it, nor did he think too much about it. However, he did not expect that Ajin's strength had reached such a level. Not only did she choose, but she also chose the golden scissors 50 meters in the air. Although this magical weapon was strange, and no one paid much attention to it, Hilo, who was familiar with most of the magical weapons in the treasure vault, knew that this golden scissors was the highest level treasure in the entire treasure vault. It was definitely a treasure among treasures. Even the treasure vault of the Mage Guild did not have a divine artifact. Divine artifacts were too rare, and even if there were, they had long become the exclusive property of the supreme powerhouses. For thousands of years, the Mage Guild had not been able to store one, but the golden scissors in Ajin's hand was a genuine semi-divine artifact. It was not in existence close to a semi-divine artifact like Ji-Dong's Jun Mo In and Yang armor, but a real semi-divine artifact. It was also the leader of the metal weapons in the treasure vault, and its value was absolutely immeasurable. Such a divine artifact was chosen, but Hilo still had to wait for Ji-Dong to play an important role in tomorrow's battle, and he could not go back on his word. How could his heart not bleed? Right now, he was only praying that Ji-Dong wouldn't be like this lady and steal another top-grade treasure. The flaming bar glanced in Hilo's direction intentionally or unintentionally, and a faint smile appeared on her delicate face behind the veil. Ajin gestured with the giant golden scissors in her hand. Streaks of golden light danced in the air in a cold trajectory. The cold air was extremely dense, and the killing intent was strong. A rare smile appeared on her pretty face that was as hard as ice. It was obvious that she was extremely satisfied with this weapon. She did not even say a word of thanks. With a flick of her wrist, the golden scissors disappeared into thin air and fused with her storage magic tool. Ji-Dong asked Hilo curiously, "President Hilo, why do you still have a strange weapon like scissors here? And it's even a long weapon? Can this thing be used?" After all, Hilo was President Thunder of the Mage Guild. Seeing that it was impossible for Ajin to return it, he naturally would not lie. He sighed and said, "This time, the guild is going to go bankrupt. The golden scissors that this lady chose is a rare treasure, a semi-divine artifact, or a powerful magic weapon at the level of a sub-divine artifact. This weapon was personally forged by His Majesty Song Kue of the Metal family 500 years ago, and its attack power is extremely powerful. Song Kue was the title of the Supreme Master of the Metal family. There is also a story about this scissors. It is said that when His Majesty Song Kue of the Metal family was young, her feelings were played with by a man. Her name was Yuan Yuan, and the man who played with her seemed to be a famous wood magician surnamed Su. No one knows the specific process, but it is known that after His Majesty Song Kue was abandoned, her mind changed greatly, and she cultivated in seclusion for 50 years. 50 years later, when she came out of seclusion, the magician surnamed Su was still alive. 50 years could not dilute the hatred in Her Majesty Song Kue's heart, so she used the big scissors she forged to personally cut off the young root of that man surnamed Su, ending the grudge. After that, His Majesty Song Kue roamed the continent, killing all the ungrateful people in the world. In 10 years, at least thousands of men's young roots fell in her hands, until she met the president of the Mage Guild at that time and persuaded him to become one of the elders of the guild. Only then did the massacre end. At that time, there was a joke. Ever since Her Majesty Song Kue joined the guild, for as long as 30 years, the guild was always full of women, and the number of male magicians who joined greatly decreased. Later, after Her Majesty Song Kue passed away, this golden scissors was left behind and was kept in the treasure vault for safekeeping. Because of its strange origin, this scissors had a very strange name, Eunuch Maker. After listening to Shi Luo's story, Ji-Dong only had one feeling, and that was cold. His lower body was cold. His expression also became extremely interesting. He secretly decided that no matter what happened in the future, he would try his best to keep a distance from Ajin and never have any form of physical contact with her again. What a joke. The eunuch maker had cut off countless roots of trouble. This thing was really too perverted. Uffed. The flaming bar finally couldn't help but laugh. She really couldn't stand it anymore. Shi Luo and Ji Dong looked at each other. They were both men. Even though Shi Luo was not young, they still felt sad. This eunuch maker was simply a pervert among perverts. She was a great weapon against men. When Ji Dong's gaze drifted to Ah Jin again, Ah Jin immediately widened her beautiful eyes and said, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and choose your own. If you keep looking, I'll make you the first sacrifice." After saying this, even she couldn't help but laugh. The flaming bar pulled her over and leaned on her shoulder, giggling nonstop. Speechless, really speechless, Ji Dong calmed himself down and looked at the magic weapon in the air again. No matter how perverted the eunuch maker was, it was at least a demigod weapon. His choice couldn't be worse than Ah Jin's. After calming himself down, Ji Dong's gaze wandered. He slowly closed his eyes, focused his mind, and immersed himself in his soul fire. The fire of the soul was still beating slightly. Driven by the magic power, its burning gradually became more vigorous, and Ji Dong's face gradually became a little more relaxed. It seemed that he had forgotten the shock and fright just now, and his whole mental power was focused on feeling the mystery of the fire of the soul realm. Gradually, the soul fire became more and more familiar. In Ji Dong's world of consciousness, a space also appeared. It was a space that was exactly the same as the treasure vault in the outside world. The flame was jumping, guiding his spirit to feel the changes of each magic weapon. Even though these magic weapons were sealed by the five-element space, the soul fire originated from chaos, and he could feel their strengths and weaknesses. Very soon, Ji Dong found a few demigod weapons with auras that were not inferior to the eunuch maker. There were indeed many good things in the treasure vault of the Magic Master's headquarters. Moreover, there were two fire attribute weapons that were suitable for him. Just as Ji Dong was about to choose from these two demigod weapons, an extremely urgent aura suddenly surged into his soul fire. This urgent aura was very strong. It was purely a spiritual fluctuation. As soon as it came into contact with Ji Dong's soul fire, it attracted his attention. Ji Dong was surprised that this magic weapon actually emitted the aura of Yang fire and Yin fire at the same time. There was a clear distinction between them. However, he hesitated. Even if this weapon was slightly inferior to a demigod weapon, Ji Dong would still be able to accept it. However, when he focused his attention on the aura of this weapon, he immediately discovered that this weapon actually had the weakest mana fluctuation in the entire polearm treasure trove. In other words, its quality was the lowest. Such a magic weapon emitted an urgent emotion to him, as if it was pulling him to choose it. How could Ji Dong not hesitate? To be able to choose a weapon from a place like the treasure vault of the Magic Master's headquarters, this opportunity would not come again. Hesitation. Ji Dong's heart was filled with hesitation. This time, the flaming bar did not give him any hints. It was entirely up to him to choose. After the time it took to drink half a cup of tea, Ji Dong finally made up his mind. What the flaming bar had said previously echoed in his mind. A divine weapon might not necessarily be suitable for him. Only when it was suitable would it be the best. Without a doubt, this magic weapon that he desperately wanted to use would have an extremely high degree of compatibility with him. The moment he opened his eyes, Ji Dong had already made his choice.